5 days had passed since Adam started classes at Clover Academy. So far, all they'd learned were the basics of arcane theory and the foundation needed for the mana extraction technique. No flashy spells, no cool incantations. Every instructor gave the same advice. Focus on drawing mana from the surroundings and strengthening your body. On the path of a Magus, there was nothing more important in the beginning. The first academic week was basically a warm-up, giving new students time to adjust to academy life and prepare for the heavy subjects that would come later. That afternoon, as the last class ended, Adam and Edward walked side by side toward their dorm. It was Friday, which meant the weekend was finally theirs. "I remember you said you wanted to hit the herb store, right?" Edward asked, chewing on a sweet bun. "Yeah," Adam replied, a little spark of excitement in his eyes. "Let's drop our stuff off first, then head out." He needed to buy a special water solution. Mixed with the body-cleansing essence oil he'd received as a reward, its effects would be far stronger. He only knew about this little trick because of the memories he'd absorbed. On top of that, he needed a full set of potion equipment. It was a huge investment, but once he started brewing and selling his own potions, he was sure he'd earn it back many times over. They dumped their bags in the dorm and left campus, heading toward the harbor market in the South Ward. By then, the sun had already gone down. Moon City glowed with artificial light, lanterns and arcane lamps brightening the streets. In the distance, the lunar bridge shimmered like a river of stars. At night, the city truly came alive. The two of them squeezed through the crowds until they finally stopped in front of a shop with a familiar sign, "Herbs and More." An idea suddenly popped into Adam's head, and a mischievous glint flashed in his eyes. He stepped aside and bowed dramatically. "After you, Lord Edward." Edward blinked, then grinned. "My dear roommate Adam, have you finally acknowledged my greatness? Very well. I shall lead, and you shall follow." Yes, my lord." Adam bent even lower, face full of fake reverence. "Your greatness is limitless." You're not as dumb as you look," Edward said smugly, lifting his chin as he pushed the door open. The moment he stepped inside, he froze. Right in front of him stood a massive, three-headed dog, all 6 eyes gleaming viciously as it stared him down. Edward's blood ran cold. His tongue tied itself in knots. Before he could even scream, the beast lunged. Eek! Edward shrieked in a pitch that could shatter glass and fell on his backside. "Somebody save me." The expected pain never came. Instead, all he heard was laughter. "Ha ha! Ed, you..." Adam was doubled over outside the doorway, clutching his stomach. "You're killing me. Ha ha ha! Son of a..." Edward slapped his thigh as the illusion faded and the beast vanished into smoke. Realization hit, and he glared at Adam. "You tricked me." Still chuckling, Adam offered him a hand. The look on your face was priceless. Edward dusted himself off and stomped into the shop. He was ready to yell at whoever cast that illusion, but the thought died quickly. Anyone who could create such a realistic illusion had to be a Magus. With that in mind, his courage deflated. He settled for glaring daggers at Adam instead. "Just wait. I'll get you back for this." After apologizing a few more times, Adam walked up to the counter. An old gnome sat there, puffing on a pipe and looking thoroughly unimpressed with the world. Adam placed a hand over his chest and bowed politely. "Good evening, Sir Magus." The gnome gave him a sidelong glance. "Looks like someone finally taught the cheap little caveman some manners." "Cheap? Caveman? Me?" Adam sighed inwardly. To be fair, Edward had drilled a few basic noble manners into him over the last few days. Thinking of that, Adam gestured to his roommate. "This is my friend, Edward." Edward peeked out from behind Adam and stared nervously at the gnome who'd nearly made him wet himself. "Hello, Sir Magus." The gnome raised a brow. "Oh, Victor's boy?" Edward blinked. "Sir, you know my father?" "Stupid kid." The gnome rolled his eyes. "Who in Moon City doesn't know your father?" Edward smacked his own forehead and stuck out his tongue. "I meant, how did you know I'm his son?" The gnome's tone softened slightly. "Who do you think your father's been buying medicine from for your mother?" Edward's eyes went wide. Then they turned red. "So you're the one who's been making my mother's medicine all this time?" He stepped forward and bowed deeply, tears spilling down his cheeks. If not for you, my mother would have she would have. Pow! The gnome rapped him on the forehead with his pipe. Enough with the waterworks, boy. Why, yes. Edward quickly wiped his face and forced himself to stop crying. Sir, may I know your name? The gnome took a long drag from his pipe before answering. Burger. Edward bowed again. Thank you, Magus Burger. Burger waved him off like a bothersome fly, then turned his gaze to Adam. So what do you want, Brad? Adam respectfully handed over a neatly written list. Burger scanned it and let out a small sound of surprise. Finally planning to start brewing. Are you? Yes, sir, Adam said, unable to hide the excitement in his voice. Not bad. Burger nodded, as if he'd expected this. All right then. That'll be 450 gold pieces. What? Adam nearly jumped. He'd been prepared for it to be expensive, but this was robbery. Of course, Burger added, lips curling into a sly smile. I could give you a discount. Adam suddenly felt a very familiar sense of dread. W, what do you want in return? Burger chuckled as he scanned the list again. Let me guess. Besides the basic herbalism tools, you're planning to brew healing potions, strength boosters, antidotes for venom, and explosion potions, as expected of a master herbalist. Adam couldn't help admiring him. To anyone else, the ingredients he'd written down would look random. Yet Burger had instantly seen through the combinations and identified all the potions Adam intended to make. All but one. And these, Burger continued, tapping the parchment, 20 liters of mana-infused distilled water, citrus extract, and sanguine leeches. What are those for? Those three were the key to the water solution that would greatly amplify the body-cleansing essence oil. They were all cheap and common, but mixed correctly, the result was anything but ordinary. Adam planned to buy from the shop often. Winning over a master herbalist like Burger seemed worth the risk, so he decided to be honest as a gesture of goodwill. Sir, I want to combine those three and make a solution that enhances the body-cleansing essence oil, Adam explained. Burger's brows knitted together as he fell into thought. Adam went on. When the nutrients in the citrus extract combine with mana-infused water, you get a solution that fully opens the body's pores. Then the sanguine leech acts as a primer between that solution and the body-cleansing essence oil. Burger cut in, eyes suddenly gleaming. Brilliant! To think such common ingredients could be used like this. He turned his sharp gaze on Adam. Boy, did that wandering Magus teach you this? Of course, Adam lied without blinking. Burger stroked his thick beard thoughtfully. I figure as much. There is one minor problem, though. With this solution, the body-cleansing essence oil will become far more effective, but the pain you'll experience will also skyrocket. Adam only shrugged. So what? If I can't endure a little pain, I'll never gain anything. Burger studied him for a long moment. Slowly, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, and he nodded. Good answer, boy. He hopped down from his stool and headed toward the spiral staircase leading upstairs. You too come with me. Adam and Edward exchanged a confused look, then followed. The second floor doubled as Burger's laboratory and living space, though the lab clearly took priority. Ranks of glassware and equipment filled the room, all meticulously arranged. Whoa! Adam's eyes sparkled at the sight of vials, flasks, beakers, and strange tools of every shape and size. Shelves were lined with ingredients and neatly labeled potions. One day I'll have a place like this, he thought, grinning to himself. They stopped in the center of the room before a large cauldron filled with swirling green liquid. Burger snapped his fingers. A dozen empty vials flew from the shelves and hovered in the air around the cauldron. With a casual wave, the green liquid rose in a shimmering stream and poured itself into each vial, filling them to the brim without a single spill. Adam and Edward stared, mesmerized. They hadn't even been taught how to cast basic spells yet, and this display only made them more impatient to learn. Move the cauldron, Burger said. Adam and Edward looked at each other. Was he talking to them? Heavy footsteps suddenly echoed from behind. They turned around and nearly jumped out of their skins. A humanoid figure of dark metal lumbered from the shadows. It was over 6 feet tall, with a crescent-shaped crest jutting from its head. The construct walked straight past them toward the cauldron. What is that? Edward shrieked. Burger rolled his eyes. Calm down. It's a golem. Completely harmless. A golem, Adam repeated, watching the metal figure nervously as it lifted the cauldron with surprising care. It's a magically created construct, Burger said in a bored tone. You'll learn about them later at the academy. The adamantine golem carried the cauldron to a corner and set it down. Now, bring me the Ganesh wooden tub, 25 pounds of citrus fruit, and 5 pounds of sanguine leeches, Burger instructed. The golem plodded over to the shelves and started gathering everything, moving with mechanical precision. Adam couldn't help asking, Magus, Burger, does it not speak? How would it? Burger snorted. Golems are mindless and emotionless. They only follow their master's orders. Perfect slaves, really, and very expensive. By the time he finished, the golem had placed all the requested items at Burger's feet. The old gnome turned to Adam. All right, take out the body cleansing essence oil. Let's get this over with. Wait. Adam blinked. Get what over with? You mean we're doing it here? Of course here, idiot, Burger snapped. I need to see the process with my own eyes if I'm going to study it properly. But the essence oil is back in my dorm, Adam said weakly. Not a problem. Burger waved dismissively. He pulled a small metal whistle from his pocket and blew it. No sound came out. But then, the space in front of Burger began to twist. Colors warped, as if someone were smearing wet paint across reality. A moment later, the distortion split open, and a small black shape shot out. It was a puppy. The little creature landed, looked around with its tongue hanging out, then spotted Burger. Woof! It leapt at him, happily licking his face. Adam and Edward gaped. A dog had just ripped open space and jumped out of the void like it was nothing. Burger looked at their stunned faces and chuckled. Now this, he said, scratching the puppy behind the ears, is something they won't be teaching you at the academy.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Adam and Edward had dumbfounded expressions as they saw the little black puppy playing with Burger's beard in a cute manner. This seemingly harmless and adorable creature had torn open space and jumped out from who knows where. To say that the two kids were astonished would be a severe understatement. Adam looked at the little black puppy that had a fluffy tail and 2 brown spots right above its eyes that looked like its eyebrows. He then looked back at the crack in the void that was beginning to mend itself and couldn't help but gulp involuntarily. The colors in that space were gathering back and becoming less saturated. At the same time, the crack in the void was also closing itself at a fast pace. At the last moment, Adam was able to catch a glimpse of the scenery behind the crack in the void. It was a place of extremes. The colors in this place seemed saturated to the extremes and were very intense to look at. Adam was reminded of those abstract paintings that he had seen some artists display on the streets of Moon City. It was only a short glimpse, but Adam felt his head spinning. It took him a few moments to clear his head, and when he did, the crack in the void had already mended itself, and everything had gotten back to normal. The youth's back was drenched in cold sweat as he stared at the spot where the puppy had come out from. What was that place? He asked with lingering fear. Oh, Burger raised his eyebrows in surprise. You really have high spiritual power for someone who's just become a magus. Adam was puzzled. He looked at Burger and asked, What do you mean? Burger pointed at Edward and chuckled. Look at this idiot. Only one glance at the spirit world, and he's already out cold. Adam turned to look at his roommate, and indeed he was sprawling on the ground while drooling. Is he going to be okay? Adam asked in concern. Don't worry about it. Burger waved his hand nonchalantly. He then crouched down and placed the puppy on the floor. The puppy began running circles around him happily. Adam suddenly thought of what Burger had just said and asked with shining eyes, Sir, what is spiritual power? And what is this spirit world? Burger made a face and reprimanded. You talk too much. Ask those idiots at the academy. Adam stood there meekly after being scolded by the old gnome yet again. "Where have you kept the essence oil?" The gnome asked. "It's in the wooden trunk under my study table," replied the youth in a soft voice. Burger rubbed the puppy's ears and instructed, "Blackie, you heard him. Go get his trunk." "Woof!" Blackie wagged his tail and then ran toward Adam. He circled a few times around the youth and then finally raised his hind leg and began urinating. "What the heck?" Adam jumped in surprise and retreated, but he was too late. Blackie had already peed on him. Adam looked at his stained white pants and then berated Blackie. "Bad dog." "Woof!" Blackie only stuck out its tongue, seemingly taunting Adam. Seeing this, Burger chuckled. "Looks like Blackie has taken a liking to you. And this is how he shows it." Adam had a wronged expression. "By peeing on me, that's just his way of leaving a mark on you," Burger replied while smoking from his pipe. "Anyways, get going, Blackie." "Woof!" Blackie nodded and then waved his little paw. The following moment, the space distorted and the colors in that area started to melt once again. Then a small crack in the void was torn open and the little puppy jumped inside. Adam was once again astonished at this scene, but this time he didn't dare stare at that strange place beyond the crack in the void. He still felt great apprehension toward that place. Only after the space crack had mended itself back did he walk up to Edward. He grabbed his shoulders and jolted him awake. "Ed, wake up." "Huh?" Edward sat up feeling disoriented. "What happened? Where am I? I'm hungry. Where's the food?" Adam rolled his eyes and was about to reply when all of a sudden the space in front of them distorted and tore open. And this time, the crack was much bigger. Adam instantly closed his eyes. But Edward, the plump boy caught sight of the spirit world and passed out once again. Blackie jumped out of the space crack, but this time his tail had magically elongated and was wrapped around a wooden trunk. The cute little puppy placed the trunk in front of Burger. His tail shortened and it began wagging intensely. "Woof!" Blackie looked at Burger excitedly, as if saying, "Praise me, praise me." Burger crouched down and dotingly patted Blackie's head. "Good boy." He then took out a glittering purple crystal the size of an adult human's fist from his pocket and gave it to Blackie. "Here you go." "Woof!" Blackie grabbed the crystal with his front paws and immediately swallowed a whole. He then licked Burger's face once more and then turned around and tore a crack in space. The cute little puppy barked at Adam, bidding him farewell, and then jumped inside the space crack, returning to the spirit world. Adam was frozen stiff. He couldn't believe the things that had just transpired. His mind was short-circuiting from all the questions that were popping up inside. What is the spirit world? What the hell was that dog? How did it manage to bypass the Academy's defenses? How did it enter my dorm room? How did it bring back my trunk? Who? What? When? How? Adam was beginning to feel dizzy and was overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. Only when Burger spoke to him did he snap out of his thoughts. "Boy, take out the body cleansing essence oil. Let us begin remodeling your body." The old gnome then instructed the adamantine golem to pour all the mana-infused water into the garnished wooden tub. After that, Burger snapped his fingers and the essence was magically extracted from the citrus fruits. While the citrus extract was being mixed with the mana-infused water, Adam took out the essence oil from his trunk and handed it to Burger. After stripping his clothes, he climbed inside the trunk, feeling slightly nervous and apprehensive about the pain he was about to go through. "Don't worry, boy," Burger comforted. "I'll try my best to alleviate the pain." Adam nodded, his eyes shining with determination. He took a deep breath and muttered, "All right, let's do this." Although the pain was still there, his mind was tricked into believing that the pain had been alleviated. Such was the might of the spells from the school of enchantment. Despite the feeling of pain having been reduced to a large degree, Adam continued to struggle while gritting his teeth. The water solution had opened the pores on his skin, and the body-cleansing essence oil was slowly seeping in. A few minutes passed, and Adam continued to withstand the terrible pain. Burger circled the wooden tub, his eyes shining with brilliance from time to time. The feather quills continued to write down notes on the hovering parchment papers. Steam began to rise from the surface of the water, which had now turned bloody, and it looked like the body-cleansing essence oil had reached some sort of barrier. It could no longer penetrate further inside Adam's body. But right at that moment, Burger instructed his adamantine golem, now. The golem poured 5 pounds of sanguine leeches into the wooden tub. These leeches were extremely minute creatures. They were attracted by the blood that had been leaking out of Adam's pores and immediately swam toward it. These leeches were strange creatures, very similar to moths. They would recklessly charge toward the sight of blood and bathe in it. However, the very same blood would become the reason for their demise. Within moments, the leeches penetrated Adam's body and continued to bore further inside. They passed through the flesh, the muscles and tendons, and finally the bones. But by this time, they had already perished one by one. Blood was their source of sustenance, as well as their cause for departure from life. How fascinating, Burger exclaimed. To think that such unassuming creatures would have such an effect. The herbalist who taught the boy really is a genius. I wonder if she's from the Uriel continent. Or perhaps, the pain Adam was withstanding increased tenfold. The innumerable sanguine leeches, although now dead, were able to dig extremely minute tunnels inside his flesh for the body cleansing essence oil to seep further in. The essence oil's potency had increased tremendously as it thoroughly nourished Adam's skin, flesh, muscles, tendons, and even bones. Slowly, they began to restructure in the most optimal way the youth's body would allow. The bloodied water released large amounts of steam as it began to evaporate. Adam's body continued to intensely tremble from the pain. His eyes had already rolled back, but the pain had kept him conscious. Right when he felt that he wouldn't be able to take it anymore and pass out, Burger's voice drifted into his ears. "Endure it, boy. Remember what you said. No pain, no gain." With that, he brought his hands together, resounding in a loud clap, and 2 more magic circles appeared above Adam. It was the same spell that the old gnome had used earlier. Adam's eyes gained clarity, and he screamed in his heart, "Persevere! I must persevere! Heya!" He clenched his fists and roared to the skies. The liquid in the tub began to decrease rapidly as it was heated. Large amounts of steam were produced, and it enveloped the entire second floor. Adam's body was very muscular and bulky, as he had gone through strength training earlier in his childhood, after he had found out that he had a gift for spellcasting. But now, with the help of the body cleansing essence oil, his physique was instead shrinking. The youth's body was going through a wonderful metamorphosis as the essence oil transformed it from the inside out. His bones were strengthened, and his muscles and tendons were remodeled, becoming more compact. Although his muscles had now shrunken and become smaller, in truth, they contained tremendous power. The quills continued to furiously write down the entire process on the parchment papers. Just from this simple operation, Burger was able to learn quite a lot of things concerning the human anatomy. But more than that, he was tremendously inspired. It was guaranteed that his future experiments would be much more exciting and bear unexpected fruits if he implemented what he learned just now. Another dozen minutes later, the water in the tub had completely evaporated. Edward, at some point, had already woken up and was intently looking in the direction of the wooden tub. But he couldn't see much because the entire floor was enveloped in steam. However, Burger could see everything clearly. He couldn't help but laugh loudly. "Ha ha! Interesting, very interesting." Edward was about to ask the old gnome about Adam, but suddenly the steam parted and a lone, naked figure could be seen getting out of the wooden tub. The moment Edward's eyes landed on this figure, his eyes widened in disbelief. Adam slowly got out of the tub and stood firmly on the ground. His height had increased slightly, but his physique was the most prominent change. Earlier, he was bulky, but now he was lean. The muscles on his body were defined, almost as if his entire body had been sculpted by a masterclass sculptor. Adam clenched his fists and could feel the immense power coursing through his body. He couldn't help but grin widely. All that pain and suffering, it was worth it in the end. Edward was completely and utterly dumbfounded as he stared at him. His roommate had become taller and much leaner than before. He simply couldn't believe it. Could the body-cleansing essence oil really have such an effect? It was simply inconceivable to Edward. After a long time of staring with his mouth agape, he asked in astonishment, "Adam, is that really you?" Adam grinned at his friend and replied, "Hee hee, who else?" But before he could finish what he was about to say, his smile froze and his eyes rolled back as he fell face first. The grueling experience of having undergone a complete body remodeling had finally gotten to him, and he instantly passed out. Before Adam fell to the ground, the adamantine golem had swiftly and gently picked him up and placed him on its shoulder. "Go lay him down in the guest room," Berger instructed. The golem silently carried Adam and walked to the other end of the floor, towards the small guest room. As Edward saw the departing back of the towering golem, he couldn't help but ask out of concern, "Is Adam going to be all right?" Berger, who was studying the notes on the parchment papers, replied without looking back, "Don't worry about it. The kid's simply tired." "Okay," Edward replied softly. Berger finally turned around and walked toward Edward. He took out a metal flask from his pocket and gave it to the boy. "Trust me, your friend is going to be just fine. And take this potion. It's for your mother." Edward's eyes lit up as he saw the metal flask in the gnome's hands. He carefully grabbed it and placed it in the pocket of his robe. He then looked at Berger and sincerely said, "Thank you very much, sir." Berger waved his hands. "Now, Shu, get going. I'll send Adam back to the academy after he wakes up." Edward bowed gratefully. "Thanks once again." He then turned around and ran out of the store. The youth made his way out of the crowded streets of the market, all the while making sure that the potion inside his pocket was safe and secured. After exiting the market area, Edward ran along the harbor and finally got on the lunar bridge. He didn't take a moment to rest as he continued to run across the glittering bridge and made his way toward the North Ward. About 10 minutes later, Edward finally made his way inside the noble district and was now standing in front of the metal gates to a large and opulent mansion. Armored men were guarding the gates, but when they saw Edward, they respectfully bowed and opened the gates. "Good evening, young lord." Edward ignored them and ran inside the mansion, panting intensely. He ignored all the maids and servants inside the mansion who bowed and greeted him. Only after he reached the second floor and arrived at the entrance to a particular room did he finally stop to catch a breath. Breathing heavily, he gently opened the doors and walked toward the bed where a figure seemed to be sleeping soundly. Edward came to the bedside and whispered, "Mother, mother, I've got your medicine. Wake up." The woman, who was tucked inside a warm blanket, slowly opened her eyes. Her skin looked extremely pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes. At a single glance, one could tell that this woman was very sick. "Eddie, is that you?" The woman stretched her hand and reached out for Edward. Edward gently clasped her mother's hand and spoke with tearful eyes, "Yes, mother. It's me, Eddie." A maid, who at some point had entered the room after Edward, helped his mother sit up. His mother coughed intensely as she struggled to even sit. "Here, feed it to her." Edward gave the flask to the maid. His heart ached when he saw his mother drink the potion with great difficulty. At some point, a few months after Edward was born, his mother fell very ill. And it was only thanks to Edward's father's connections and Berger's potions that she was able to make it out alive and live till today. No one was able to determine the reason for her illness, not even someone as medically experienced as Berger. This led to Edward blaming himself for his mother's miserable state and becoming estranged from his father. The youth believed that his birth had something to do with her mother's illness, and he could never forgive himself. As he was wallowing in his own misery and silently crying, his mother gently caressed his head and spoke warmly, "My little Edward, why are you crying again? Look, mother is fine after drinking the potion." Edward nodded and wiped the tears from his face. "Don't worry about me, okay?" His mother, Elia, comforted him. "How did you come to have my medicine today?" "It's usually your father's men delivering it," Edward replied while forcing a smile. "Mother, I went to Magus Burger's store with my roommate today. It was there that I found out that he's been the one who's been concocting your medicine all this while. So he handed me the medicine and told me to give it to you." Elia coughed while covering her mouth. She then drank some water and nodded. "Old Berger has helped me tremendously. It's good that you got acquainted with him. He's a very wise man." The mother and son spoke for a long time. Edward had met her for the first time today after joining the academy and thus had a lot of things to share. He spoke about his roommate, Adam, and how life was at the academy. After about 10 minutes or so, when Edward noticed that the medicine's effect were taking effect and his mother was getting drowsy, he said affectionately, "Mother, you should rest now. I'll come meet you again tomorrow." "All right, Eddie." Ellie nodded. "Go back to your room and rest. Mother will see you tomorrow." "Yes, Mother." Edward tippy-toed and planted a kiss on Elia's forehead. He then turned around and ran back to his room. Seeing his beloved sons departing back, Elia couldn't stop her tears from flowing. She muttered under her breath, "I don't know how long I have left to live. My only wish is that you, Elaine, and Victor live a happy life." Elia knew that she would die sooner or later because of her illness. She didn't fear death, but the pain and suffering her dear family would have to go through after she left them. As tears slid down her pale face, Elia soon fell asleep, dreaming of better days that she knew would never come. In this vast world, everyone, whether they are rich or poor, old or young, man or woman, had to endure some sort of pain and suffering in their lives. After all, to live is to suffer, and to survive is to find some meaning in this suffering. 2 days later, when Adam opened his eyes, he found himself in an unfamiliar room. He got up from a small single bed and found that the clothes he was wearing had become smaller. To be more precise, he had become taller. "Where am I?" He got to his feet and looked around. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the mirror in a corner of the room. Is that really me?" He screamed in shock. He had grown a couple of inches in height, and his body had become lean and muscular. Surprisingly, Adam's complexion had also improved. His skin was similar to that of a newborn baby now. Looking into the mirror, Adam caressed his jaw and muttered in disbelief, "Just what the hell happened?" His jawline had become more defined, along with his cheekbones. His eyebrows were straight like an arrow. Overall, the body remodeling had brought him unexpected changes. Although the transformation didn't turn him into a pretty boy, at the very least his looks had become much more decent compared to before. One could even say he was very pleasant to look at now. Truth be told, any improvement from his previous self could be said to be pleasant looking. Now, after the transformation, he couldn't be considered handsome, but he couldn't be considered ugly either. As Adam admired the new changes to his body, he couldn't help but click his tongue in slight regret. Too bad the body cleansing essence oil can only be used once. A few minutes later, he exited the guest room and made his way downstairs. There, he found Berger in his usual spot, at the counter, reading a thick book. Berger raised his head and looked toward the youth. So you've finally woken up. How do you feel, boy?" Adam replied cheerfully, "Sir, I feel amazing. The body remodeling did wonders." Berger nodded. "Indeed. With the help of your water solution, the effects of the essence oil have increased by more than 30%. It would be strange if you didn't feel amazing after the transformation." Adam approached the counter and asked expectantly, "Sir, now can I get a discount?" Berger snorted. "You really are cheap." Adam could only laugh sheepishly. "Observing the whole process of your body remodeling has been very beneficial to me." Berger began as he smoked from his pipe. Adam's eyes turned bright. "Does that mean you'll—" However, Berger cut him off. "I will never give away things for free. It is a creed I live by. And so I'll give you a discount of 100 gold pieces and sell all the equipment and the ingredients for 350 gold pieces. How about it?" Adam's eyebrow twitched, and he screamed in his heart, "Old Foggy, and you call me cheap?" Besides, including the 3 platinum coins, Adam's net worth currently was around 350 gold coins and some change. If he were to buy all the items on the list he made, he would only have a handful of silver and copper coins left with him. As he was struggling to come to a decision, Berger added, "Another creed I live by is the law of fair and equal exchange." Adam looked at Berger with hopeful eyes, waiting for the old gnome to state his proposal. "The recipe for your water solution has opened a lot of doors for me in regards to herbalism. My arrogance had clouded my judgment, thinking that common ingredients found in everyday life could not be of help to herbalism which is a magical endeavor in and of itself. But I couldn't be more wrong. That is why, along with all the materials you've listed, I'll give you this. Burger grabbed an ancient-looking book from the shelf behind him and kept it on the counter. Adam asked excitedly, "Sir, what is this?" "Didn't you want to know more about the spirit world?" asked Burger while puffing out a smoke ring from his mouth. "I found this tome in an ancient ruin when I had gone adventuring in my youth. However, to read this, you'll have to learn the secret language that Magi use." "Secret language? What's that?" Adam asked with great curiosity. "Pow!" Burger smacked Adam on the forehead with his smoking pipe. He scolded, "Ask your professors at the academy, you fool." "Why, yes, sir," Adam replied with a wronged expression. "Additionally, I'll also give you this." Burger tapped his forehead with his finger and extracted an ethereal white thread from his head. He then flicked the glowing white thread in Adam's direction. What the heck? Adam retreated a few steps back, but in the end, the white thread still managed to burrow its way inside his head. He was about to inquire about it, but all of a sudden an influx of information appeared inside his brain. Adam was speechless. Only after a few moments did he snap back to his senses and spoke excitedly. "Rank 1 illusion spell?" The ethereal white thread that Burger had extracted from his head actually contained his own knowledge about a rank 1 spell. "You have surprisingly high spiritual power for some of your age. This spell from the School of Illusion will suit you well." Burger spoke nonchalantly as he continued smoking. Adam was about to ask what the School of Illusion was, but he wisely stopped. He was afraid that the grumpy old gnome would smack his head again and tell him to ask the professors at the academy. After having received such valuable information about a rank 1 spell, as well as a book containing knowledge about the spirit world, Adam was more than happy with the transaction. He grabbed his money pouch, counted the coins, and handed it to Burger. "Sir, I'm very satisfied with the transaction," he said gratefully. Although he was only left with a few silver and copper pieces, he wasn't unhappy in the least. He believed that all the things he had received from Burger were much more valuable than a measly 350 gold pieces. Burger nodded lazily. "Now grab your things and get lost. I have to get back to my experiments." Adam bowed sincerely. "Thank you once again, sir." Suddenly, he thought of something and asked expectantly, "Sir, in the future, are you willing to trade arcane knowledge with me in exchange for my herbalism knowledge?" Burger was moved. Just a simple water solution made of commonly found ingredients had inspired him so greatly. He couldn't help but be curious about the herbalism knowledge imparted to Adam by his teacher. After pondering for a while, the old gnome nodded. "Very well. The trade will depend on the quality of information you provide. But rest assured, I will always maintain the attitude of facilitating a fair and equivalent exchange." Adam was ecstatic. Now he would be able to exchange the herbalism knowledge he had absorbed inside the White Lotus for arcane knowledge from Burger. "Great," the youth replied cheerfully. "I'll see you soon, Sir Magus." With that, he grabbed the ancient tome as well as all the ingredients and equipment he had listed earlier and left the store. He couldn't wait to go back to his dorm room and begin brewing potions. "So, kids," an old Magus with a kind face, wearing blue robes and a pointy hat, asked the classroom, "who can tell me how many schools of magic there are?" The majority of the first-year children were silent, while a select few hesitated to speak. At the front row, a young blonde girl with emerald eyes immediately raised her hand. The old professor smiled warmly. "Yes, Lisa, go ahead." This girl was none other than the one who had come in second place at the entrance exam, Lisa declared. She nudged her black-rimmed, round glasses and spoke articulately. "Professor, there are 8 schools of magic. They are the school of warding, summoning, divination, enchantment, invocation, illusion, alteration, and finally necromancy." Excellent. The professor was very happy with Lisa's active participation in the classroom. He then looked at all the other students and added, "You all should strive to be a student like her. Look at how hard-working she is." As the professor continued to praise Lisa, Edward, who was sitting toward the back of the classroom with Adam, softly grumbled, "This nerd, so annoying. Does she always need to answer every question?" Adam, who was digging his nose, chuckled slightly as he saw his roommate secretly take out a sweet bun from his pocket and munch on it. Shaking his head, he turned his attention back to the professor. The schools of magic are also known as schools of philosophy. These are categories into which all spells are organized. The professor walked around the classroom as he continued his lecture. These 8 schools of magic have been developed over a period of hundreds of thousands of years. And through countless generations, Magi have created innumerable spells that fall under these categories. The students nodded from time to time and continued to jot down notes. Seeing this, the professor nodded with gratification. He continued, "The School of Warding focuses on protective, sealing, and defensive magic. When mastered to a high degree, Magi who major in this school can even banish targets to a different dimension." Whoa! The students were fascinated by the fact that different dimensions even existed. Even Adam and Edward were astonished by this revelation. Adam immediately thought of the spirit world. The professor allowed the students to digest this new information and continued. The School of Summoning, like its namesake, focuses on summoning creatures, objects, and magical effects. The spells from this school are efficient at transporting people, objects, and energy. A student raised his hand and curiously asked, "Professor, what exactly do you mean by transporting?" The professor stroked his long white beard and smiled mysteriously. "Teleportation." A collective gasp resounded in the classroom. Seeing this, the professor chuckled. Us Magi not only have control over the elements of nature, but even more profound concepts such as space. Of course, only the mightiest of Magi can cast such powerful spells. Adam recalled the scene he had witnessed when he had first acquired the White Lotus. The black-armored Magus had used spells that froze space and disintegrated his enemies. I see. So is that Magus using spells from the School of Summoning? Or could it be something else entirely? Adam speculated with shining eyes. The professor continued his lecture. The School of Divination is the most mysterious. Although it has fewer spells compared to other schools, it allows a Magus to see the unseen. The unseen? Professor, what do you mean? A young girl asked with curious and innocent eyes. Spells from this school allow a Magus to see the future, gain insights, and uncover hidden information. The professor replied patiently. See the future? Isn't that too overpowered? All the students had the exact same thought. The professor, knowing exactly what everyone was thinking, chuckled. Of course, to perform an accurate divination, the Magus also needs to gather the relevant information. He then took out his pocket watch from inside his robes to check the time. Seeing that very little time was left, he accelerated the pace of the lecture a little. Next up is the School of Enchantment. This school focuses on manipulating minds and influencing the thoughts and actions of the targets. Magi who major in this school have a keen sense of observation and are adept at curses and hexes. The professor walked back to his table and started to pack up his things. Unfortunately, we don't have more time left. I have introduced 4 schools of magic to you all. Your homework will be to study the other 4 schools. Next class, I will ask you questions about it. So be prepared. As he walked out of the classroom, he gently smiled at the children. Moreover, next class I will teach you how to construct spell models and give you a thorough explanation of the components required to cast spells. After learning them, you will finally be able to cast spells. Class dismissed. Thank you, Professor. The students got up from their seats and spoke in unison. Edward stuffed the last of the sweet bun inside his mouth and muttered sadly, "It's combat training now. I hate it." Suddenly he thought of something and softly elbowed Adam. "Say, buddy, how about skipping class and going out to eat? I know a really good restaurant that serves delicious food." Adam rolled his eyes and scolded, "You fatty, do you think about nothing but food?" "Of course not," Edward replied without hesitation. He rubbed his palms together and spoke like a shady salesman. "Let's go, Adam. Attendance is not necessary for the next class. Besides, that restaurant also serves one of the best wines in the city." Adam's eyes lit up and he laughed loudly. "Ha ha! You should have mentioned this in the beginning, you dummy. Let's go." "Hee. I know you too well, Rumi," Edward thought with glee. The 2 friends strutted out of the classroom, one thinking about delicious food, while the other thinking about fine wine. Their mouths were drooling, causing the other students to draw back from them. But right as they were about to exit, a young girl stood in front of them and blocked their way. Lisa declared. Edward's eyebrows furrowed. What do you want, nerd? However, Lisa completely ignored him and walked up to Adam. She looked him dead in the eye and spoke with determination. Adam Constantine, I challenge you to a duel. Adam was momentarily dazed. This was completely out of his expectations, and he couldn't help but wonder if he had somehow offended this girl for her to challenge him out of nowhere. While Adam was looking at Lisa in puzzlement, Edward came forth and expressed his dissatisfaction. Go back to the library, nerd. For some reason, Edward found her very annoying. Lisa, for the first time, looked at Edward and snorted. Get lost, fatty. Wah. Edward's face turned red from anger, or perhaps it was embarrassment. Adam called him fatty all the time, but he was never offended by it. But for some reason, when Lisa called him fatty, it really struck a nerve. He pointed his trembling finger at the bright young girl and scolded. You nerd. Who the hell are you calling a fatty? Who do you think? Lisa rolled her eyes and decided to ignore him. This caused Edward to flare up even more. He was about to scream, yet again, when suddenly Adam patted his shoulder to calm him down. He then looked at Lisa and asked in confusion, Why do you wish to fight me? We don't have any enmity between us, do we? Adam was genuinely confused. Because of his high perception from constantly absorbing souls, he was able to vaguely glean a person's intentions. It was difficult to explain, and he couldn't put it in words. It was a strange, new feeling to him. But he was certain that Lisa did not mean him any ill intent. Lisa looked into Adam's eyes and coldly muttered, Fighting in reality is different from fighting inside an illusion. I refuse to believe that I'd lose to you in a one-on-one match. Adam finally understood why the girl was challenging him. Turns out he simply hurt her ego by coming first in the entrance examination. Realizing this, he lost interest. He grabbed Edward's arm and walked past her. I refuse your challenge. Lisa and the surrounding children who had stopped by to see the drama unfold were dumbfounded. In this world, not only were Magi wise scholars, but they were also fierce warriors. They never backed down from challenges, especially a duel. After all, no Magus would want to be labeled a coward, especially a Magus from the light faction. Righteous Magi cared about their reputation above all, but Adam couldn't be bothered to care about such things. Moreover, he was new to the Magus society and wasn't aware of most of its customs. That was why everyone was stupefied upon hearing Adam's answer. Forget everyone else. Even Edward was stunned. Lisa came to her senses and reprimanded Adam. You, how can you refuse a challenge? Are you a coward? Adam turned around and made a stupid face while picking his ear with his pinky finger. Yeah, I'm a coward. What are you going to do about it? You think your words can bait me into fighting you? Get lost. Once again, Lisa was dumbfounded. Adam began walking away while whispering to Edward, Come, fatty. Let's get the hell out of here. Everyone's looking at me strangely. Edward's lips twitched. Because of his roommate, he was now embarrassed as well. So he began sprinting out of the classroom while avoiding the gazes of his classmates. Wait. Lisa ran after the two and then blocked their way once again. She pointed at Adam and scolded him. You coward. I'm willing to wager 50 gold pieces. She wanted to bet on the outcome of the fight, but before she could finish her proposal, Adam appeared in front of her and grabbed her shoulders with a wide smile. The winner gets 50 gold pieces? Ha ha ha. Deal. Adam laughed heartily. He was really in need of some money. After buying all the herbalism equipment and ingredients from Burger yesterday, he barely had any money left. Moreover, it would take him some time to brew potions and sell them. So 50 gold coins was a big deal to him. Lisa was tongue-tied at Adam's sudden behavior. She didn't know how to respond for a long time. Only when she saw Adam walking away did she come to her senses and scream. Wait. When do you want to duel? Adam confidently waved his hand, replying without turning back. 10 days. Keep those gold coins warm for me. Hee. Lisa's eyes narrowed, and she thought to herself, this guy's too cocky. In the end, she harumphed and declared, I'll see you at the Academy's arena in 10 days. With that, she turned around and left without waiting for Adam's reply. After both parties had left the classroom, a commotion ensued among the children who had just witnessed everything. Heavens! Did the goddess challenge our batch's rank 1 student to a duel? Screw that. Adam initially refused. He's a scared little rat. Yes, yes. He dares to fight against our goddess. Lisa? Blasphemy. Everyone boycott him. Adam was so scared, huh? He only agreed after Lisa put 50 gold coins on the line. A peasant is a peasant after all. Lisa had a lot of fans in this new batch. Not only did she have an A-grade aptitude, but she was also very pretty. Naturally, everyone, mostly boys, flocked towards her. Besides, this was the first duel to take place between students from the first year. Naturally, everyone was excited. And to top it all off, the duel was happening between the rank 1 student and the rank 2 student. At once, this news spread amongst all the students of the first year, and there was an uproar. The children excitedly anticipated the day of the duel. Inside a famous restaurant located in the South Ward, Adam and Edward were sitting at a table enjoying rice wine. Seeing Adam drink wine in such a carefree mood, Edward couldn't help but ask, Adam, aren't you nervous about fighting that nerd? She has an A-grade aptitude, you know? Adam downed a small cup of wine and replied, what has aptitude got to do with anything? Of course it does. Edward blurted out, not only does she have larger mana reserves than you do, but her mana replenishment speed is also much higher than you. It plays a very crucial role in battle. Adam nodded. You're right, but mana isn't the only factor that determines the outcome of a fight. Edward couldn't come up with a retort. He could only helplessly sigh and chug another glass of wine. Are you confident in winning? Adam's lips curled up into a grin. Of course I am. His confidence naturally stemmed from the fact that he had 2 rank 1 spells in his possession. Now, all he needed was to study the construction of spell models and the usage of spell components. But that was not all. He had another trump card, one that he acquired from the White Lotus. The following day, Adam and Edward had come back to their dorm room after all the classes had ended. Right after entering the room, Edward jumped on his bed and decided to take a nap. Adam, on the other hand, began brewing potions. Currently, he was standing in front of a metal cauldron and swirling a red liquid inside of it with a ladle. After the liquid had reached a certain texture, he paused. Now, I have to let it simmer for exactly 11 minutes. He recalled the herbalism knowledge of the expert that he had absorbed inside the White Lotus mysterious space. As the liquid continued to bubble inside the cauldron, Adam pulled a chair and sat down. He then grabbed a book and began revising the things he had learned in school today. The School of Invocation focuses on harnessing and manipulating magical energy to create devastating effects. Adam's finger ran across the words on the page as he mumbled. This school of magic had the most potent attack power among all the schools. Magi who major in this school effectively create something out of nothing, in a manner of speaking. The rank 1 spell, Eldritch Beam, that Adam had received as a reward for coming first in the entrance exam, was a spell from the School of Invocation. Magi who specialize in the School of Illusion focus on creating sensory illusions and manipulating their target's perception to deceive and mystify. Deceive the 5 senses, then the mind, and ultimately deceive the world itself. Adam was very fascinated by the School of Illusion. The spell that Berger had given him belonged to this school. After fantasizing about the various things a Magus could pull off with the help of illusion spells, Adam got back to reading the book again. The School of Alteration focused on changing and transforming the properties of objects and creatures. And finally, the School of Necromancy dealt with life and death, manipulating life force, communing with spirits, and raising the dead. Practitioners of the School of Necromancy, also known as necromancers, traversed a morally gray area. Some used their powers to heal the living and ensured that the dead were given proper burial and peacefully sent off to the afterlife, while other necromancers used their powers to cause chaos and destruction to society. After going through information about all 8 schools one more time, Adam kept the book away and approached the cauldron. About time, he muttered after inspecting the texture of the red liquid. He grabbed a handful of violet leaves and earthen roots from a glass jar and placed them inside a mortar. Then, he grabbed a pestle and began crushing these ingredients until a fine white paste was formed. Right when the time was right, he dropped the paste inside the cauldron and began stirring the liquid with the ladle again. He infused a thin strand of mana into the liquid and facilitated the mixture of the red liquid and the green paste he had just made. This is the moment of truth. Adam's eyes shone with anticipation. After another few minutes of stirring the liquid in a particular rhythm, the outcome was finally decided. The once red liquid had now turned dark and murky. Seeing this, Adam was extremely dejected. His shoulders slouched, and he dropped the ladle. Another failure. This was already his 7th try at concocting a healing potion. Not once had he succeeded. Although he had absorbed the memories and experiences of that expert, that didn't mean success was guaranteed. All it meant was that he'd have to take fewer detours compared to others. How could things be so easy? Without putting in effort, could a person really achieve their goals? The answer was clear to Adam. He despaired over his failure for a few moments, and then began brewing the potion one more time. The sun set and the twin moons rose. While Edward was still sleeping soundly, snoring like a pig, Adam was still attempting to brew the healing potion. This was his 11th attempt. He poured the white paste from a mortar into the liquid inside the cauldron and patiently swirled the potion. His eyes were focused and his mind was clear. It didn't matter if he failed and had to redo it all over again. Adam could feel the fast rate of improvement he was going through after every failed attempt. Now, instead of feeling agitated over it, he welcomed it. As long as there was some progress made, he was satisfied. As he infused his mana into the potion and waited for the result, Adam couldn't help but feel a little nervous. A few minutes later, the red liquid inside the cauldron shone brilliantly and gave off an aura of vitality. Instead of the dark and murky texture that Adam had gotten used to seeing, the potion now reflected a bright red light with small tints of verdant green. Seeing this, Adam raised his head and burst into loud laughter. Ha ha! Success at last. After more than 6 hours and 10 failures, he had finally succeeded. After bathing in this triumphant feeling for a while, Adam grabbed the empty vials on the shelf and then carefully poured the healing potions inside them. In the end, the bright red liquid inside the cauldron was able to fill up 6 crystal vials. Looking at the healing potions stored inside these vials, Adam grinned. The market price for a healing potion is 5 platinum pieces or 50 gold pieces. I have almost recouped my initial investment. Thinking of this, Adam was ecstatic. Although herbalism was an expensive endeavor and also required a lot of talent and diligence. But once the herbalist was able to brew a successful potion, they'd receive a significant return on investment. After safely putting the 6 vials inside a wooden box, Adam mumbled, where should I sell these? Would Old Burger buy them? Safely putting away the wooden box inside his trunk, Adam walked up to Edward, who was sleeping, and kicked him in the stomach. Wake up, Ed. It's time for dinner. Edward woke up and glared at his roommate. Stop disturbing my beauty sleep, damn it. He then turned over and closed his eyes again. Besides, I'm on a diet. Get lost. Diet my ass. Adam scoffed. He turned around and walked out of the dorm room. His voice lingered behind. I was thinking of going for a 12-course meal at Sherman's Inn. It's fine if you don't want to come. I'll just have to enjoy the food by myself. Edward remained silent. It seemed that he was really taking his diet seriously. But the next moment, wait for me. The fatty shot out from the bed and ran after Adam. He just couldn't resist the temptation of delicious food. As for the diet, after having a very heavy meal last night with Edward, Adam went back home and was able to concoct 4 more healing potions. But it took him almost the entire night. He was only able to succeed after repeated failures. He was so in the zone that he'd forgotten the passage of time. And that is the reason why he was currently sleeping in class. Meanwhile, Edward had gotten a paintbrush from somewhere and was currently painting Adam's face to resemble that of circus clown. Unlike magic combat techniques, the casting of arcane spells requires spell components, said the middle-aged professor with fiery red hair. There are 3 components. Some spells require only one component, while others require two. The professor moved around the classroom with his hands behind his back as he continued the lecture. Similarly, there are also spells that require all three components. He looked around the classroom, and his gaze fell on Adam, who was soundly sleeping with his head on the table. Seeing this, the professor frowned. He already had a bad impression of Adam and Edward for coming in late for class on the first day of the academy. And now that he saw Adam sleeping, he was furious. He stomped in Adam's direction and roared in his ears. "Adam Constantine, tell me what the three magical components are." "You up." Adam was scared shitless. He hurriedly stood up and got into a fighting position, looking around in alarm. Who? What? Where? When everyone saw Adam, they burst into laughter, not because of his sudden reaction to being woken up, but because of how his face was painted. His face was painted white, his lips were red, and there was a blue circle and a square on both his eyes. Edward, who was sitting next to him, struggled to contain his laughter as he saw Adam make a fool out of himself. When Adam came to his senses, he realized what a blunder he had made. And when he turned around and saw the professor glaring at him, he almost peed his pants. Professor Jock, I can explain." Adam tried to come up with an excuse, but his heart sank as he saw the professor's facial expression distort with each passing second. And to top it all off, this professor was known in the academy for his bad temper. Seeing Adam's clown-like face, Professor Jock had great difficulty controlling anger. In the end, he lost it. "I don't need your damn explanation. Go to the front of the classroom and stand while holding your ears," he screamed at the top of his lungs. Adam could only nod helplessly. "Yes, sir." He glared at Edward before walking to the front of the classroom. Meanwhile, Edward was covering his mouth and laughing uncontrollably as he looked at his masterpiece of a painting on his roommate's face. Pow! Professor Jock smacked the back of Edward's head with the book he was carrying. "And you, go join him." Edward rubbed his head and looked at the professor with a wronged expression. He wanted to protest, but seeing the professor's angry face, he didn't dare to. And soon, he too joined Adam. The professor took a few deep breaths to calm his fiery temper, and then proceeded with the lecture. As I was saying, there are three spell components that are required for spell casting. Who can tell me what they are? As always, Lisa was the first student to raise her hand. The professor looked at her with a warm smile and gestured. "Go ahead, child." All the professors in the academy doted on Lisa, but the same couldn't be said for Adam and Edward. Lisa nudged her black-rimmed round glasses and replied, "The first is the model component. This requires a Magus to construct a spell model, also commonly known as a magic circle, with their spiritual power, and then inject the spell model with mana to cast the spell." "Very good," Professor Jock praised. "Now before we move on, Lisa, please remind the class what spiritual power is." "Spiritual power is the energy generated by the soul," Lisa replied on cue. Professor Jock nodded with a smile. "Now, tell me about the other two spell components." "The second is the physical component, which requires the Magus to make a series of motions with their fingers or hands to cast a spell. And the final spell component is the material component, which requires a Magus to sacrifice the required material." Lisa answered thoroughly. "Splendid," Professor Jock commended. "You may sit down, child." Lisa nodded and sat down. She then glanced at Adam and flicked her hair with a humph. Seeing this, Adam's eyebrow twitched. This girl, so competitive. Professor Jock continued the lecture. "Now you all know about the three spell components. Each spell has different requirements in terms of its components. That is why a Magus must always be prepared beforehand." As the professor continued speaking to the class, Adam fell into deep thought. Just the purchase of material components is already so expensive. No wonder only children of noble birth can afford to embark on the path of a Magus. Learning magic was truly an expensive endeavor. If it wasn't for the memories he had absorbed from the White Lotus, Adam would have had no way to make money. Maybe he could have done some odd jobs like he used to back in the day. But was that really viable? Adam was once again reminded how drastically his life had changed after he acquired the White Lotus, and he was eternally grateful for it. Suddenly, he heard one of the students ask, "Professor, In the beginning, you mentioned something about magic combat techniques. What are those? Well, it's something that you all will be taught from the third year onward. Professor Jock began by rubbing his chin. But I suppose I can give you a brief introduction to it right now. In short, magic combat is the fusion of physical combat and magic. A Magus imbues their weapons with mana, creating a wide variety of formidable techniques. The class soon ended and Professor Jock left the classroom. This was the last class of the day, so students were free to leave now. Adam still had to sell the 10 healing potions, so he decided to go to Old Burger's store. But before that, he had to get some payback. Adam looked at Edward while cracking his knuckles. "Why, fatty, what did you do to my face?" Upon seeing Adam's face, Edward burst into laughter. "You really have a future as a court jester." Ha ha ha. Hearing this, veins began to pop on Adam's forehead. He then immediately pounced on his roommate. "You fatty, get wrecked." Wait, mercy. Gah. Edward was given a thorough beating by Adam. The students had all stopped by to witness the fight between a clown and a human-shaped pig. Some even started cheering and betting on the spot. Lisa shook her head in disdain as she walked past them, tarnishing the name of us mighty Magi. How ridiculous. In the cobblestone streets of the South Ward, people from various races could be seen mingling with one another. The majority of the Moon City population consisted of humans, at around 40%. About 30% were elves, dwarves were 20%, and finally, gnomes were about 10%. Although people came from various backgrounds and ethnicities, they got along pretty well with each other. Such was the cohesiveness of the Jewel of the South. It was rumored that the Magus who had founded Moon City modeled it after the famous ancient elven city of Fapor. It was said that at the peak of its prosperity, Fapor housed people from all races and not just the 4 major races of the world. However, like all things in existence, nothing's ever meant to last, and the ancient elven city of Fapor was forever lost to the ravages of time. In the crowded market area by the docks, a tall and lean youth could be seen strutting along the sidewalk while carrying a small wooden box. The youth was wearing the student's uniform, an olive cloak of Clover Academy. However, people would give him strange looks when he passed them by. That's because his face was painted like that of a clown. Now, street performers such as bards and clowns were pretty common in Moon City, but the residents of the city had never seen a student of a prestigious institution, such as Clover Academy, dress up like a clown. Adam ignored the people giving him strange looks as he constantly cursed under his breath. "That fat pig. Just where the hell did he get the face paint from? I just can't seem to wash it off of my face." After repeatedly failing to clean his face, Adam simply gave up. There was no point bothering over something he didn't have control over. That was his life philosophy. He finally reached Herbs and More and entered the store. Surprisingly, there were a few people who were browsing through the items inside the store. When he entered the store, everyone's gaze landed on him, and they all looked at him strangely, to say the least. Adam's lips twitched as he noticed people staring at him. Suddenly, woof! Blackie appeared from behind the wooden counter and dashed toward Adam. Blackie! Adam, for some reason, was very happy to see this strange little puppy again. He crouched down and wanted to pat the puppy, but Blackie dodged his advances and continued running circles around him. Haha, you sure are energetic today. Adam's mood was instantly lifted seeing Blackie play with him. All of a sudden, Blackie's eyes flashed with a mischievous light. He stopped running, lifted his hind leg, and peed on Adam's foot at lightning speed. And before Adam knew it, Blackie had already run behind the counter, hiding behind Burger. Adam was stunned, still having difficulty comprehending just what the hell happened. When he saw his worn-out bamboo shoe stained with a pungent yellow liquid, his face distorted. Son of a... He glared at Blackie and chased after him. Bad dog, I'll fight you today. Woof! Blackie had a taunting expression on his face as he dodged the angry Adam. And just like that, the two began running around inside the shop. One was fuming with anger, and the other seemingly having a lot of fun making the former angry. When the people inside the store saw a clown chasing after the store owner's dog, their backs were drenched in cold sweat. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. All of them had the same thought. Just who is this kid? Chasing after Lord Burger's familiar. Is he courting death? Burger, who had been sitting behind the wooden counter and smoking from his pipe as usual, looked at Adam and Blackie playing around and couldn't help but silently chuckle to himself. He then looked at the Magi who had come to his store to buy certain items and muttered, "You all, get lost. All, get lost." "Yes, sir," the group of Magi replied in unison, with their backs straight as an arrow. They cast one last glance at Adam and then hurriedly left the store. They didn't dare defy the order of a powerful Magus. After the Magi left, Burger looked at Adam, who was still trying to catch Blackie, and stated, "Give up, boy. You'll never be able to catch him." Adam finally gave up on chasing the naughty puppy. He glared at him and spoke with narrowed eyes. "One day I'll pee on you, Blackie. Let's see how that makes you feel." Hearing this, Blackie scoffed. He then strutted toward Burger with a smug expression on his face. He jumped on Burger's lap and then closed his eyes as the old gnome started stroking his furry little head. Burger looked at Adam and asked, "What are you here for this time?" Adam walked up to the counter and placed his wooden box in front of Burger. "Sir, look at this. What do you think?" "Pow!" Burger smacked Adam on the forehead with his pipe. He roared, "Do you expect the box to open by itself?" Sorry," Adam replied with a wronged expression, thinking to himself, this grumpy old fart, getting angry for no damn reason. As Adam opened the box and the crystal vials containing the healing potions inside came into view, Burger mumbled with slight dissatisfaction, "Oh, it's just a healing potion." But his eyes soon narrowed and the words got stuck in his mouth. He grabbed a crystal vial and intently stared at the red liquid inside. Seeing some green tints within the liquid, he asked, "This isn't your usual healing potion, is it?" After removing the cork and taking a whiff of the potion, the gnome's eyes lit up. "A new recipe." He looked at Adam and asked, "How much for the recipe?" However, much to his surprise, Adam shook his head and smirked. "Not for sale." Burger was momentarily taken aback. He couldn't remember the last time someone said no to him. Then, he heard Adam speak with a hint of gloating. "Of course, I can also give it to you for free." This little shit. Burger's eyebrow twitched as he thought to himself, "What goes around comes around, is it?" Thinking this, he couldn't help but smirk. "Huh, fine boy. Tell me, what do you want in return?" Adam grinned, and with his face resembling a clown, his smile looked humorously fierce. "I want." "Ha ha ha." Burger laughed exaggeratedly at Adam's folly. "We have a deal." Seeing Burger, Blackie also began laughing while pointing his tiny paw at Adam. The little puppy would do anything to tease this stupid human. Adam had a bad feeling well up in his heart as he saw the gnome and the puppy laugh at him. What's wrong? The old gnome viciously ridiculed him. "You want to trade a mere rank 1 spell for a new potion recipe? You fool." "Woof." Blackie nodded. Wait a minute. You mean to say a new recipe is much more precious than a rank 1 spell?" Adam asked nervously. "Of course it is." Burger scolded the youth. "The price of a rank 1 spell in the market is almost always 10 platinum pieces, whereas the price of an unknown recipe is many times more than that." Adam clenched his fists till his knuckles were white, cursing himself silently. He looked at the old gnome and asked with a fawning smile, "Honorable sir, I seem to have made a mistake. Can we still—" "Pow! Stupid boy." Burger smacked the youth with his pipe. "Although I advocate fair trade, you won't learn from your mistakes if you never face the consequences." "Woof woof." Blackie crossed his front paws and nodded with a serious expression. Adam massaged his swollen temple with tearful eyes. He wished he could have researched a little more about the prices before coming here. He clasped his hands and looked at Burger pitifully. However, with his clown-like appearance, he looked anything but pitiful. "Good sir, please just—" "Pow!" Burger scolded. "Next time think twice before running your mouth." Adam could only helplessly nod. The two parties then initiated the fair trade. Burger received the new recipe for the healing potion and began reading it. The excitement in his eyes couldn't be hidden. Whereas, Adam received the rank 1 spell, Hide. This was a spell from the School of Illusion. Essentially, this spell rendered one person or an object invisible to a target. Since this was a rank 1 spell, it was only effective in front of one person. The duration of the spell was 3 minutes. It required only 2 spell components, model and physical, meaning the caster only needed to construct the spell model and initiate hand motions. No material sacrifice was needed. As Adam was reading the description of the spell from the scroll, he heard Burger praise. Truly innovative. The usage of common ingredients to concoct a magical potion is really fascinating. I have learned much. Adam's lips twitched, and he wondered if he disclosed some of the knowledge regarding evil and demonic potion recipes that he'd absorbed from the memories. Would the grumpy gnome still praise that powerhouse? Some of the herbalism knowledge that Adam had absorbed from the memories truly sent chills down his spine. He couldn't believe that such diabolical practices in herbalism were even possible. He threw this matter to the back of his head and asked, "Sir, what do you think? Will you buy these 10 healing potions from me?" Burger didn't reply. One by one, he checked the contents of all 10 vials and then deeply looked at Adam, causing the youth to feel a little nervous. "Is this really your first time concocting potions, boy?" "Of course," Adam replied without hesitation. "I can even brew one in front of you if you don't believe me. But my success rate is less than 40%. Also, you'll have to provide me with ingredients free of cost." 40% success rate for a beginner. Burger was speechless. In the end, he could only sigh and think to himself, this boy, he's a genius after all. No wonder that herbalist chose to impart her knowledge to him. He waved his hand and stated, "No need. I believe you. I'll buy all 10 of them at market price. 5 platinum coins apiece. We have a deal." "Deal?" Adam replied excitedly. Soon, the transaction was made. Burger took all the healing potions. He was planning to study them thoroughly. For a master herbalist like him, a lot of information could be gleaned by physically analyzing the potion. Who knew? He might even be able to improve on the new potion. Adam, on the other hand, looked at the pouch full of platinum coins with glee. This was more money than he'd ever seen or made before. Just from a single batch of potions, he had already recouped the investment he had made earlier. After staring at the coins for a bit more, he looked up at the old gnome and asked, "Sir, do you have horned black sheep's fleece?" This was the material component one needed to sacrifice to cast the rank 1 spell, Dinky Illusion. Adam had received this spell, as well as a book about the spirit world from Burger the last time he was here. Burger nodded. 5 gold pieces for 10 grams. Shit, so expensive. Adam cursed inwardly. He then looked at the old gnome in a flattering manner and asked, "Great sir, can you give me a diss?" Pow! Burger flew into a rage. "You stingy human, get lost." Ugh! Adam tried to dodge the grumpy gnome's pipe shot, but he got hit anyway. He rubbed his forehead and muttered, "See, calm down, calm down. I was just asking." With a pained expression, he took out 5 platinum pieces and handed them to Burger. "I'll take 100 grams. Oomph. Burger snorted and kept the money. He then waved his hand, and an indiscernible magic circle manifested at the tip of his fingers. Following that, a glass jar flew out of one of the shelves and popped itself open. Then, exactly 100 grams of black-colored fleece shot out of it and flew inside an empty paper bag. The paper bag then magically landed on Adam's hand. As the youth looked at the fleece inside the bag, he couldn't help but sigh. 5 platinum coins for just this. Learning magic is truly expensive. He decided to go back home and brew more potions for sale. Otherwise, his income would not be able to keep up with his terrifying rate of expenditure. He thanked the old gnome and then ran back to his dorm room. After Adam had left, Blackie transmitted a mental message to Burger. Burger smiled warmly and rubbed Blackie's ears. "You've noticed it too, haven't you, old friend?" "Woof." Blackie nodded vigorously, his tongue sticking out. Both Burger and Blackie had already noticed the pure nature of Adam's soul. But this wasn't what caught the old gnome's interest. After all, every once in a while, there would always be a few Magi who were born with an extremely pure soul. The old gnome had lived for a long time and had come across lots of things. Very few things could move him. What truly caught Burger's interest was the strange affinity that Adam had with the creatures from the spirit world. This was directly proved by Blackie. The little puppy never interacted with other people, and even if he did, it would always be in a negative manner. But in the presence of Adam, Blackie felt at home. Burger's eyes shone with hints of excitement and anticipation. Let's see how everything unfolds. I wonder what path you will choose. Outside dorm room 52A, a small crowd of first-year students had gathered. Some were leaning in on the door, trying to listen to what was happening inside, while others were whispering to each other. For a while now, sound of things breaking, crashing, curses, and yelling could be heard from inside 52A. Naturally, the kids were curious to know what was happening and had gathered outside the door. What do you think is going on? These two are always up to something. Yeah, why am I even surprised? You think there will be another fight? I sure hope so. Yeah. No matter how stupid these two are, they sure are entertaining. Just as the children outside were chatting with one another in hushed tones, the door to the dorm room slammed open and a fat pig charged out. However, upon closer inspection, it wasn't a fat pig at all, but Edward. Edward crashed into a few children and pummeled them with his weight. He hurriedly got to his feet and looked inside the dorm room. Seeing what he was seeing, he burst into laughter. His laughter came to an abrupt halt when a flying shoe suddenly smacked him in the face. Bam! Ugh! Edward grimaced in pain, but he still couldn't stop laughing. You finally realized? Ha ha ha. After making fun of Adam a bit more, he ran away while continuing to laugh loudly. The children that had gathered outside the dorm couldn't help but wonder just what happened between these two idiots, when all of a sudden, Adam's furious voice came from inside the dorm. Fatty, what the hell did you do to my face? As Adam exited his dorm room, fuming in anger, the other kids couldn't help but burst into raucous laughter. What's wrong with his face? Ha ha ha, it's still there. Edward must have used some sort of magical dye. Adam was extremely embarrassed when he saw his classmates make fun of him. In the end, he went back inside his room and slammed the door shut. He went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. But the only thing that looked back at him was a clown. Adam tried to wipe the paint off of his face many times, but it was all futile. It had been 2 days since Edward painted his face, but the paint simply refused to be washed away. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly. Did that fatty really use some sort of magical paint? What a pain in the ass. Since he couldn't do anything about it at the moment, he threw this issue to the back of his head. Then, he grabbed some items from his study table and exited his dorm room, ignoring all the strange looks people were giving him. He walked to the north end of the campus and entered a building. He took the stairs to the underground level and walked to the reception where an old woman with a crooked nose was dozing off on her seat. Ahem! Adam coughed loudly to wake her up. Who? The old woman rubbed her eyes, and her gaze finally landed on Adam. What in the world? If it wasn't for Adam wearing the school's uniform, she would have really attacked this clown. You sure have a weird fetish, kid. The old woman muttered while rubbing her chin. Anyway, are you here to rent out a room? Adam's lips twitched at the woman's comment, but he still replied respectfully, Yes, ma'am. May I please know the rental rate? A platinum piece an hour. The old woman yawned. Although Adam had expected it, it still pained him to learn about the exorbitant price. He couldn't help but hopefully ask, See, can I get a discount? The old woman looked at Adam speechlessly. Are you stupid? No, I am Adam. Old woman. Adam. The two silently looked at each other for a minute. Finally, Adam gave in and handed a platinum coin to the old lady. Here, take this and go to room 5. The old woman took the platinum coin and handed Adam a metal room card. Adam thanked her and walked toward room 5. The old lady saw his departing back and mumbled to herself, The Academy's accepting all sorts of strange characters these days. Soon she closed her eyes and fell asleep once again, the sound of her snoring echoing in the hallway. Adam waved the metal key card and entered a large room at the end of the corridor. The walls of this room were made of some sort of dark alloy and were inscribed with complex formations. These must be the noise-canceling and energy absorption runes. Adam muttered to himself as he ran his hand across the wall. At the other end of the room, there were 3 training dummies. They too seemed to be made of the same material as the walls. Adam walked toward the one at the center and knocked on it a few times. Tough indeed. He walked to the other end of the room and got into position. The reason why he had come here today was naturally to practice his spell casting. Currently, he had 3 spells in his arsenal, but only one of them could be used to attack. The rank 1 spell, Eldritch Beam, while the other 2 spells, well, they were only used to fool people. He got on one knee and then began weaving a series of motions with his hands. He had practiced this a lot of times before, hence his movements were fast and fluid. Within just a second, Adam had already completed the 11 hand and finger movements required for the physical component of the spell. Finally, he grabbed his right wrist with his left hand. Then he aimed the index and the middle finger of his right hand at the training dummy in the center. Following that, Adam channeled his spiritual power, and a resplendent and bright magic circle materialized at the tip of his 2 fingers. The physical and model components were completed, and then a mass of dark purple energy began gathering at the tips of his 2 extended fingers. Seeing this, Adam was incomparably excited. This would be the first time he would cast a spell. He soon calmed his emotions and focused all his attention on the spell. The mass of crackling energy concentrated at the tips of his fingers, and the next moment, Adam's eyes widened in shock and apprehension. Boom! A crackling beam of terrifying energy shot out from the tip of Adam's fingers. However, this energy beam did not shoot out in a straight line, but in an unpredictable crisscross manner. The energy beam zigzagged its way across the room and shot past the training dummy that Adam had been aiming at. Ultimately, the spell ended up missing the mark by a large distance and landed on the ceiling at the other end of the room. Adam, on the other hand, was swept off of his feet and landed a few meters away because of the spell's recoil. He looked at his right hand in horror. It had already gone numb. Realizing what had just happened, the youth couldn't help but gulp nervously. I'm afraid if it wasn't for my flesh being constantly nourished by mana, my hand would have been severely injured. He was slowly beginning to understand just why each minor stage of rank 1 mana foundation was so crucial to a Magus. Without the proper foundation, a Magus would end up becoming a victim of their own spell. Adam got to his feet and looked at the area on the ceiling where his spell had landed. That part of the ceiling was glowing with purple light as the runes continued to absorb the energy. His back was drenched in cold sweat as he mumbled, "What if this spell landed on another person?" He believed that if this spell landed on a person, it was sure to leave a bloody hole in them. Of course, that's only if it's a normal person with no exposure to mana. But this realization still brought chills down his spine. As expected of one of the most devastating attack-type spells amongst rank 1 spells, Adam marveled. He got into position and prepared to cast the spell one more time. Again, there were only a few days left until his duel with Lisa, and he had to make the most of every possible second to perfect his spells. Initially, he had accepted the challenge because of his need for money. But now, things were different. He had already made a lot of money by selling potions and would continue to do so. Now, he just wanted to duke it out with a genius Magus who had an A-grade aptitude. Adam's eyes shone with fighting spirit as he completed the physical and model components. His lips curled up into a wide grin as he cast the spell one more time. Boom! Just as Adam was preparing for the upcoming duel, Lisa was also doing the same. She didn't become complacent just because she had an advantage over Adam in terms of talent. Not only did Lisa have a great talent for spellcasting, but she was also an incredibly hard-working young girl. Perhaps her sheer diligence was the reason why she was able to excel as a Magus at such an early age. Inside another state-of-the-art training facility on campus, Lisa was currently battling a dozen training dummies made of wood and straw. As it turned out, apart from spellcasting, Lisa was also very proficient in hand-to-hand combat. This was a given. After all, she did come in second place in the combat assessment. The dozen training dummies slowly surrounded her, but Lisa remained unfazed. She allowed them to completely surround her, and right when the moment was right, her eyes shone with brilliance. She crouched down and placed her hand on the ground. A magic circle lit up under her palm, and the next moment she muttered calmly, "Shape Earth." This was a rank 1 spell from the School of Alteration. The moment this spell was cast, the ground beneath Lisa rippled outwards, and wave after waves of mud spread out in all directions, causing the straw dummies to lose their balance and fall over. Lisa rushed in one direction as she wielded her wooden staff. The straw dummies were magically created constructs, and thus had some levels of sentience. They wanted to dodge Lisa's attacks, but because of the rippling ground underneath them, they were unable to. And just like that, with a simple wave of her staff, Lisa was able to demolish the majority of the wooden dummies one after another. By the time the dummies got to their feet, she had already destroyed over half a dozen of them. Throughout the whole time, she remained calm and composed. Before the rest of the dummies made their move, Lisa dashed toward them once again and raised her staff. With great accuracy, she hammered the staff down vertically. Bam! The wooden dummy's body instantly exploded into splinters. Another dummy came forth and swung its fist at her face. Lisa calmly sidestepped and dodged the attack. Then, she swung her staff upward at lightning speed and destroyed the dummy's upper body. Suddenly, her eyes narrowed and she retreated a few steps. Right as she had retreated, 3 dummies crashed at the spot she was earlier at. Having missed their attacks, the last 3 dummies rushed in her direction. One of the dummies pounced at her, intending to take her down and pin her to the ground. However, Lisa gracefully somersaulted in the air, dodging the takedown. While her body was positioned in the air right on top of the dummy, she extended her fair hand and tapped the dummy's head with her finger. Her hand movements were so quick that she had already completed the spell's physical component before her finger touched the dummy's head. Rank 1 spell, Frostbite. A thin layer of frost formed on the dummy's head and slowly made its way to the rest of its body. But Lisa didn't wait. She immediately waved her staff in midair and shattered the dummy's head. Bam! Before she had even landed on the ground, the dummy was already decapitated. Just as she landed on the ground, the remaining 2 dummies had already attacked her with their fists. Seeing this, Lisa smirked. She placed her hand on the ground once again, and a magic circle lit up with resplendent light. Rank 1 spell, Shape Earth. However, this time, instead of waves rippling outward, 2 earthen spears shot out from the ground and instantly impaled the 2 dummies. This was yet another application of this rank 1 spell. Lisa got to her feet and swung her staff again, destroying the last 2 dummies with great ease. She exhaled a deep breath and nudged her black-rimmed glasses as she looked at the dozen dummies she had just destroyed in the span of a minute. Right at that moment, the sound of applause could be heard from the direction of the training facility's entrance. Bravo! As expected of my dear Lisa. Listening to this voice, Lisa's fists clenched tightly, and anger and hatred flashed across her eyes. But when she turned around and looked in the direction of the voice, the animosity was instantly replaced by a smile. A forced smile. 2 boys were standing at the entrance of the training facility. Both were wearing the student uniforms of Clover Academy and looked very noble and refined. The one who had just complimented Lisa was a youth with long brown hair and bright blue eyes. Underneath the olive-colored cloak, he was wearing luxurious garments. At a single glance, one could tell that the youth came from an affluent background. His name was Kevin Gracie, heir to the overlord Magus family of the Faber province. And the other youth who was standing behind Kevin was none other than Jeffrey Palmer. It seemed that after entering the academy, Jeffrey was able to somehow join the friend circle of Kevin, who was a second-year student and also one with an A-grade aptitude. Lisa approached the 2 with a bright smile adorning her lips. She then stood in front of Kevin and politely greeted him. "It is such a pleasure to see you, Lord Kevin." Kevin took 2 steps forward and gently caressed Lisa's cheeks. "You're as beautiful as the day I first met you, Lisa." This sudden gesture caused Lisa to indiscernibly tremble out of sheer disgust. However, she hid it and continued to display the same bright smile as she replied, "I'm flattered, my lord." Kevin nodded as he slowly looked at Lisa from head to toe, his eyes oozing with lust. After taking his time to lasciviously ogle Lisa, he mumbled, "I was right to choose you that night after all. Only you are worthy of becoming my wife. When Lisa heard Kevin mention that night, her eyes involuntarily reddened. Kevin noticed this and smiled coldly. He didn't care about Lisa's feelings at all. All he cared about was having her in his possession. Anyway, Kevin's grip around Lisa's cheeks tightened a little as he came closer and whispered in her ears, "I'll be watching your upcoming duel with that farm boy. Make sure to put up a good performance for me, okay?" Lisa nodded as tears threatened to fall down her cheeks. Jeffrey chimed in with a cruel smile. "If you can, make sure to cripple that bastard." However, Lisa completely ignored him as she stood there in a daze. The two boys coldly chuckled at Lisa's unresponsive behavior and then left the training facility. After the two of them had departed, Lisa's legs buckled and she knelt on the ground listlessly. Tears fell down her cheeks uncontrollably as she began sobbing. She tightly clutched at the grass and mud beside her and spat through gritted teeth. Why? As she continued to cry loudly, she raised her fists and punched the ground beneath her in anger and frustration. Why? 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 In the end, she buried her face in her hands and continued to sob miserably, her shoulders heaving up and down. Years ago, her family had been attacked by the Gracie family over a resource dispute. She had to personally witness her father being killed by the head of the Grace family. That night, her whole family would have been slaughtered had it not been for her accepting the sudden marriage proposal to the heir of the Gracie family, Kevin Gracie. The two were to marry each other when they were of age. And as if that wasn't enough, the Gracie family kept constant watch over her remaining family members. They even went so far as to threaten the life of her younger brother. This was to ensure that Lisa and the DeClaire family didn't dare to pull any tricks. Thinking of her dear younger brother, Lisa couldn't help but cry even more intensely. Little Jamie, she was helpless. She was powerless. Lisa lay on the ground and cried for a long time. She soon wiped her tears and got to her feet. Thinking of her family, her eyes shone with resolve as she muttered to herself, "I'll become strong so that I have to never bow down my head again. I'll make sure to protect you all." She had no hopes of avenging her father. The Gracie family was a powerful Magus family, and the head of the family was a rank 2 Magus. All she ever hoped for was protecting her own family. But deep down in her heart, she yearned for freedom. She yearned for power. She wanted strength to exact revenge. That was why she constantly pushed herself to work hard, harder than anyone else. She challenged Adam for the very same reason, hoping that she would learn something from him and come out stronger after the duel. Despite her suffering, she continued to move forward. She got to her feet. Her facial expression returned to her usual cold and aloof self. Only a few days remained till the duel, and she didn't plan on wasting her time crying and complaining. Just like Adam, she would make use of every second available to her. Lisa exited the training facility and made her way to her dorm. As she was walking through the lush and beautiful campus grounds, lost in thought, she was suddenly taken aback, because in the distance she could see a clown chasing after a boar. And currently, there was only one person in the entire Clover Academy whose face was painted like that of a joker. "Adam!" Lisa exclaimed. She hurriedly stomped in his direction. It turned out that Adam was still chasing after Edward. After a few minutes, she finally managed to catch up to them. She put her hands on her hips in an intimidating pose and blocked their way. She stared at Adam's clown-like face with narrowed eyes, trying her best to contain her laughter. "You better give it your all in the upcoming duel. Don't disappoint me." "Oomph." She then turned around and walked away, afraid that if she stayed any longer, her intimidating facade would crumble down. Adam deeply looked at her departing back and mumbled, "She seems sad." Although Lisa seemed fine and dandy on the surface, with his strengthened perception, Adam could instantly tell how gloomy she really was. Suddenly, bam! Eat that sucker! Edward kicked Adam in the butt, causing him to fall tragically. He then ran away while taunting. "Ha ha ha! Catch me if you can, you joker!" "You!" Adam got to his feet while rubbing his bum. "You're dead meat, fatty!" He then continued chasing Edward. The game of cat and mouse continued throughout the campus. Lisa, who was standing under the shade of a tall tree in the distance, and looking at the two friends playing with each other, smiled bitterly. She held her fists close to her heart and mumbled in sorrow, "I wish I could be so happy and carefree." Adam sat cross-legged on his bed, practicing mindfulness. This was the method cited in the mana extraction technique that one had to practice every day. As Adam continued to revolve the technique, minute mana particles in the surroundings slowly gathered around him and began nourishing his flesh. Only after every inch of the flesh has been thoroughly nourished will mana further seep inward toward the muscles. This would signify a Magus advancement to the second minor stage of mana foundation. However, Adam was still far away from breaking through. After almost an hour of practicing mindfulness, the youth opened his eyes, which shone with brilliance. He clenched his fists and muttered, "That bottleneck I felt earlier is beginning to loosen up. How interesting." Earlier, when Adam would go to the mysterious place inside the white lotus and try to absorb the small white dots, he would always feel full, like he had overeaten. But ever since he became a Magus and started practicing mindfulness, this feeling of bloating was slowly diminishing. The mana extraction technique is constantly strengthening my body, and this led to me being able to absorb more soul fragments. Adam rubbed his chin and speculated, could this mean the stronger my body is, the more souls I can absorb? Adam thought for a long time and then grabbed his grimoire from beside him and started jotting down his speculations with a feathered quill. He began laughing foolishly. One day, I'll uncover the secrets of the soul. Kaya-ha! But for now, his face turned solemn and he got to his feet. He grabbed his clothes and went to the bathroom to get dressed. He looked at his reflection in the mirror and suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, the face pain has come off, or else I'd be really embarrassed while fighting. Today, he would finally face off against Lisa. Lisa was currently in her dorm room, sitting at the study table and memorizing all the spell models she had recorded down in her grimoire. Coming from a Magus family, naturally, she had a lot of spells that she could use, and she was planning to make use of everything she could get. Of course, the number of spells she could cast depended on her mana reserves. But as an A-grade talent, she didn't have to worry about that. She soon got up and gathered the material components she would require to cast spells. After making sure everything was prepared and she was ready, she left her dorm room and made her way toward the academy's arena. Her eyes shone with great determination as she thought to herself, no matter what, I will win this match, and I will come out a stronger Magus. Edward was eating a sweet bun as he made his way towards the arena, but he was somewhat confused as he saw students make their way towards the arena in droves. Why are there so many people going to the arena? Strange, he muttered. When he reached one of the entry gates to the arena, he was stunned. Hundreds of students had crowded in front of the gate and were making their way inside. It seemed that all the first-year students had come. Don't tell me. Are they all here to watch Adam's match? He spoke in astonishment. He made his way towards the bleachers, to a place where he'd earlier agreed with Elaine to meet up. After making his way through the crowd with some difficulty, he finally managed to find his sister. Elaine! Elaine! He waved his hand and made his way toward her. You're finally here, come sit. Elaine beckoned to Edward with a warm smile. She was currently sitting with Jenna and a few other friends of her. After Edward greeted all of her friends, he asked Elaine curiously, why have so many people gathered to watch a match between two first years? Or is there another duel that is going to take place that I'm not aware of? Elaine chuckled. As you may already know, Lisa is a Magus with an A-grade aptitude. So naturally, people are interested to see her battle. Edward nodded in acknowledgement. But did you know, Adam is also a genius in his own right? Elaine asked with a smile. Huh? Edward was confused. How so? Doesn't he have the same B-grade aptitude as me? He does. Elaine nodded. But one of my professors disclosed to me that Adam scored a perfect score on the analytical test. Only a handful of Magi were able to accomplish this feat since the establishment of the Academy. And in some ways, this is even more impressive than having an A-grade aptitude. Are you serious? Edward's eyes bulged out. He recalled that he had only just barely passed the analytical test by completing 25% of the spell model. And to think that Adam was actually able to complete 100% of the spell model without any prior knowledge of the arcane arts was simply inconceivable. This guy, Edward, gulped involuntarily. He acts goofy all the time, but to think he's actually a genius. This time, Jenna, Elaine's close friend, replied, I was quite shocked as well. I looked down on him because of his simple background, but he's really something. Elaine's other friends nodded as well. To them, having a perfect score on the analytical test was way more extraordinary than having an A-grade aptitude, and they couldn't help but admire Adam. At a different location in the arena, inside a luxurious indoor viewing space, surprisingly enough, the faculty members had also gathered. Usually, this wouldn't have happened when a duel between two first-year students was taking place. But Adam and Lisa weren't your average first-year students. All the professors teaching the first years were present, and some of the professors who taught senior students had also gathered. And the most surprising of all was that the headmistress of the academy, Professor Godfrey, was also in attendance. All the professors were on their feet and respectfully stood behind two comfortable chairs at the front. Even though they had seats of their own, no one dared to sit. This was the respect one had to give to a powerful Magus. What the professors were the most surprised about was not the presence of the headmistress, but the person sitting next to her. Many of them couldn't help but cast curious and secretive glances at this person. Some looked at him with admiration, while others looked at him with fear. Professor Godfrey, who was casually sitting on her seat and drinking some wine, looked at the person beside her and spoke in amusement. To be honest, I'm quite surprised that you decided to show up. But I guess this is not completely out of expectation either. Isn't that right? Burger. The old gnome was wearing a gray robe, a white tunic underneath, a pair of black trousers, and black boots to match. And as usual, he was smoking from his pipe. When he heard Professor Godfrey speak to him, he simply rolled his eyes and ignored her. Now, if this was someone else, they would never dare to disrespect the headmistress like that. But the old gnome and the headmistress went way back. There were even some rumors that the two were actually very old friends and went out on adventures together during their youth. Not to mention, both were powerful rank 3 Magi. The only other Magus of the same rank as them within Moon City was the king of the Nightingale Kingdom. There was a handful of rank 3 Magi living in the Southern Federation. However, there were many more living in secrecy. Burger slightly sniffed the aroma of the wine Professor Godfrey was sipping on and asked curiously, "This smell? Lychee wine from the Akkadian Empire." Professor Godfrey nodded with a smirk. "That's right. I paid quite the sum to get it transported out here." She then stretched out her hand. The next moment, a light flashed on her palm and a wine cup appeared. She poured some wine into the cup and handed it to Burger. "Here, try some." The old gnome swirled the wine in the cup first, and then chugged the whole thing in one go. He smacked his lips and muttered, "Ah, too sweet for my taste." But then his lips curled up into a reminiscent smile. "But it sure brings back memories." Then he took out a small jute pouch from his pocket and showed its contents to Professor Godfrey. He chuckled gleefully and showed off like a little child. "Helene, guess what this is?" Professor Godfrey leaned over and squinted her eyes. The next moment, she gasped in shock. "Don't tell me. Is that?" "Haha." Burger laughed loudly. "That's right. Blackie managed to find some kim leaves in the spirit world. He brought it to me just the other day. Let's try some." When the surrounding professors heard the term spirit world, their ears perked up and they tried their best to inconspicuously lean over to see just what this item was that came from the mysterious dimension. Noticing this, Burger frowned. He turned around and roared angrily. "You useless punks! Do you want to stand on my bald head? Sit the hell down before I give you a beating." "Why, yes, sir." All the professors immediately sat in their seats, afraid to anger the eccentric old gnome. Even the fiery-tempered Professor Jock obediently sat down like a docile little cat. Burger took out an extra pipe from somewhere, crushed some kim leaves, and carefully placed it inside the pipe's bowl. He then sprinkled some powder over it and handed it to Professor Godfrey. He chuckled mischievously. Here, smoke it. Trust me, It's something else entirely. Seeing the trademark mischievous smile on her old friend's face, Professor Godfrey hesitated. She could tell that this gnome was up to some shenanigan. But the temptation of the Chem leaves was simply too much for her. She grabbed the pipe and lit it. Burger also lit his pipe, and both inhaled at the same time. A few moments later, they exhaled a large amount of multicolored smoke from their mouths. Following that, they involuntarily slouched in their seats. Their eyes and facial expressions displayed nothing but euphoria. The dozen or so professors seated behind the two were dumbstruck. All of them had the same thought. These guys, they're getting high? Amidst the loud clamor of the crowded arena, Lisa slowly made her way toward the large platform at the center. There were a total of 6 dueling platforms in the arena, 5 small and 1 large. Since there were no other duels taking place today, Lisa and Adam's match would take place on the largest platform in the center. Lisa was slightly surprised that so many people had gathered at the arena today, but soon she returned to her usual self and silently walked toward the large platform. However, deep down she was feeling very nervous. This was the first time she was fighting in front of such a large audience after all. She stepped on the platform and closed her eyes while patiently waiting for her opponent to arrive. Her fists clenched and unclenched from time to time, indicating her slight restlessness. "Wah, our goddess has arrived. Lisa, you must defeat that clown. We are with you. Lisa, 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 Lisa." All of Lisa's fans, basically the majority of the first-year students, cheered enthusiastically for her. Listening to all the cheering, Lisa slightly blushed. Her nervousness subsided a little, but she couldn't help but wonder where Adam was. Although the time of the duel, which was noon, was still a few minutes away, she expected Adam to be punctual at the very least. The time of the duel had finally arrived, but Adam was still nowhere to be seen. Not only Lisa, but even the match referee, a final-year student, was frowning at this. And soon 5 more minutes passed by. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 35 minutes. By now, Lisa was completely enraged. Not to mention her, even the referee and the audience were angered by Adam's lack of respect towards Magi's dueling customs. Just when the referee had had enough and was about to disqualify Adam, he heard the sound of footsteps coming from the direction of the arena's entrance. Everyone simultaneously turned their heads and looked in the direction of the entrance. There, they saw a figure wearing tattered and stitched-up clothes, holding a wine gourd, and wobbling in the direction of the big platform in the middle of the arena. Who else could it be but Adam? Everyone was flabbergasted looking at Adam's appearance. Even the professors. He was dressed up like a complete beggar, no? Even a beggar would dress up better than he did at the moment. Not to mention, his face was flushed red. Clearly, he was extremely drunk. Adam somehow stumbled his way and climbed up the platform. He wobbled his way toward Lisa and then suddenly stopped. He opened his arms wide and raised his head towards the sky. And then, burp. A loud and nasty burp echoed in the arena, causing everyone to become utterly speechless. Amidst the dead silent atmosphere, Adam wiped the wine off of his lips and laughed. "Ha ha, good wine." He then looked at Lisa and taunted her. "Oi, want some?" Lisa was livid. She stared at Adam with bloodshot eyes and gritted her teeth in rage. Not only had he disrespected the customs of Magi by showing up late, but he was even drunk out of his mind. When she looked at Adam's clothes, she was utterly revulsed. She was having so much difficulty controlling her anger that she didn't know what to do. Just when she was about to lash out at Adam, the referee stomped toward Adam and grabbed his collar. This final-year student was completely appalled by Adam's appearance and behavior. He roared at the youth's face. "Adam Constantine, just where the hell are your manners? Is this how a Magus carries himself in public? Are you out of your—" The referee was about to continue berating Adam, but the words got stuck in his throat. Burp! Adam burped at the referee's face without restraint. He then spoke while slurring, "Calm down, hiccup, man. Why so serious? You." The referee's face turned red with anger. He raised his hand and was about to slap the intoxication out of Adam when suddenly a fair and delicate hand caught his own. He turned around to see Lisa looking at Adam coldly and muttering in a chilly tone, "You don't have to get your hands dirty. Leave him to me. I'll teach him his place. Scum like him should have never been given a chance to become a Magus." Towards the end, her voice turned up a notch, making sure everyone in the arena heard it. Lisa's voice echoed in the arena, resonating with all the students present. At once there was a loud clamor. "That's right. Trash like him belongs in the farmlands. Just to let this peasant into the academy. How dare he disrespect Magi customs? Who the hell does he think he is?" All the students in the arena had taken a common stance against Adam. Even the ones that had a good impression of him earlier were now repulsed by his behavior. Elaine, Jenna, and her friends also began to frown. They quite admired Adam because of his high analytical skills, but now they didn't look at him in a good light. Especially Edward, he was simply dumbstruck. He couldn't help but wonder just what the hell is wrong with Adam. This is completely unlike him. Seeing everyone collectively boo Adam, Lisa began feeling slightly bad for him. She didn't expect to get such a strong reaction from the crowd. She felt she might have overdone it earlier by speaking in such a cruel manner. Hence, as a show of magnanimity, she decided to give her opponent a way out. "Adam, if you take this chance to apologize to everyone for your behavior today, I'll let this slide and allow you to yield. Please do not make this harder than it already is." The crowd was full of praise for the generosity displayed by Lisa. The students thought that Adam was unworthy of such kindliness. Regardless, they all quieted down to allow Adam to speak. In the professor's viewing area, everyone present shook their heads in disappointment at the sudden turn of events. Professor Jock, who's always had a bad impression of Adam, couldn't help but voice out his opinion to the headmistress. Showing up late and piss-drunk to a duel is truly unbecoming of a Magus. "Professor, he has no respect for authority and the ancient Magus customs. The kid's a rebel. We must severely punish him, and if possible, expel him from the academy." Before the headmistress could even reply, Berger looked at him and sighed. "Jock, you're still too short-sighted. That quick temper of yours has clouded your judgment." Professor Jock bowed towards the old gnome and respectfully asked, "Lord Berger, could you please explain?" Berger looked in the direction of Adam and smiled with approval. No matter how you look at it, the kid is clearly inferior to Lisa. Whether it is in terms of spell repertoire, mana reserves, background, or even fighting experience. So, when all the odds are against him, what can he do? Professor Godfrey answered with a chuckle. "Employ trickery." Professor Jock was taken aback. "You mean to say?" Berger took a puff from his pipe and stated, "Look carefully, Jock. Is he really drunk?" On the large platform, Adam hung his head low, his face hidden under the shadow of his bangs. While everyone waited to hear his apology, his lips curled up into a slight smirk. But he quickly hid it. He looked up and deeply stared at Lisa, his facial expression seemingly displaying remorse. He then slowly looked at everyone in the crowd, and then his gaze finally landed back on Lisa again. In the end, his shoulders slouched, and he spoke apologetically. "I'd like to take this chance to apologize." Adam's eyes flashed with brilliance, and his drunkenness instantly vanished. He screamed at the top, "Go his lungs!" to absolutely nobody. There was pin-drop silence in the entire arena. Everyone was speechless. Lisa was dazed momentarily, not having expected this outcome. But soon, she was filled with boundless rage and frustration. "You son of a..." But before she could finish, Adam had already thrown his wine gourd at her. Seeing this, Lisa was even more furious. She easily swung her wooden staff and smacked the incoming gourd bottle. Had she been clear-headed, she would have dodged it instead. But Adam had really struck a nerve. The gourd was very fragile and instantly shattered upon impact. But instead of wine spilling out, what came out was a green-colored gas. Lisa's eyes widened and she hurriedly retreated. But it was too late. The green gas had completely enshrouded her, and she ended up inhaling some of it. A hallucinogen. Lisa couldn't help but panic a little. She held her breath in and soon calmed down. No, it seems to be a type of relaxant. However, she still didn't let her guard down. She finally realized that Adam had been acting all this while. She hurriedly moved her hands and tried to complete the physical component to cast a spell, but before she could, the green gas in front of her suddenly parted and a fist enlarged in her vision. Bam! Adam viciously punched Lisa in the face, causing her to fly away and smash against the magical invisible barrier enclosing the fighting platform. Seeing Lisa miserably fall to the ground, Adam's lips curled up into a wide grin. Hey, gotcha! Silence. Complete and utter silence. Every student in the arena was dumbstruck. Their eyes were popping out, and their jaws were nearly touching the floor. Suddenly, amidst the stifling silence, there was the sound of loud laughter. Ha 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 ha. Edward stood up in his seat and raised his fists in the air. He cheered enthusiastically. Go get her, Adam. Adam looked in the direction of his roommate and smirked. He gave him a thumbs up and replied, You know it. Everyone came to their senses after this short interaction. They couldn't believe what had just transpired. At once, the audience burst into loud discussion. Heavens, am I dreaming? Did the farm boy just land a punch on Lisa? Wait a minute. Wasn't he drunk? He was definitely acting. So deceitful. Lisa, you must show him his place. Yeah, beat this treacherous clown. At a certain area in the bleachers, Kevin, Jeffrey, and a bunch of other students in the same group were looking with shocked expressions. Kevin's eyebrows furrowed and his fists clenched in anger. He looked at Jeffrey and asked, This Adam, he's from the same kingdom as you, isn't he? Jeffrey spat through gritted teeth. As much as I hate to admit it, he is. Kevin's eyes narrowed, his next words oozing with killing intent. I'll send some mercenaries to slaughter his family. That should annoy this peasant a little, don't you think? Hearing those words, everyone, including Jeffrey, felt a chill down their spines. Although Jeffrey had thought of threatening Adam with his family before, he had never thought of killing them. Besides, he couldn't even if he wanted to. He replied seemingly nonchalantly, Don't bother. I've already looked into his background. Adam's parents died when he was just a little boy, and ever since then, he's been practically living like a slave, doing odd jobs to get by. Somehow, he was fortunate enough to receive the grace of a wandering Magus and discovered that he had a talent for spellcasting. Subsequently, he made preparations to travel to the Nightingale Kingdom and then finally get admitted to the academy. Kevin snorted in disdain. A slave, huh? Yet he dares to lay his hands on my future wife. I'll deal with him later. Kevin's gaze then landed on Edward, who had just now loudly cheered for Adam. He was thinking of dealing with this person as well. And who the hell is that fatty? But suddenly he paused, and his eyes narrowed when he saw Elaine sitting next to Edward. What's his relationship with Elaine Turner? He asked the people around him. Once again, Jeffrey replied, They're siblings. The fatty's name is Edward Turner. He is roommates with Adam, and they seem to have a very close friendship. Kevin couldn't help but click his tongue in annoyance. Isn't this farm boy a little too lucky? First, he receives the guidance of a wandering Magus, and now he's even become close friends with the son of the guildmaster of the Mercantile Guild. Jeffrey didn't reply, but he too felt quite helpless about it. He had this absurd notion that the universe was compensating for Adam's miserable childhood by granting him a little bit of luck. Anyway, Kevin smiled coldly. I can't touch that fat pig. The Mercantile Guild is too big to mess with. But that farm boy, I'll make his life miserable. Jeffrey was elated listening to this. Personally, he was very scared of Adam, but if he were to get Kevin's help, then he might succeed in his revenge. On the fighting platform, Lisa slowly got to her feet and wiped the blood off her lips. She looked at her blood-stained palm, and then at Adam, who was looking at her with blatant provocation. However, she was smart enough to not fall for his ploy twice. She realized that she had fallen for Adam's tricks from the very beginning. She couldn't help but wonder, him arriving late, mocking Magi customs by dressing up like a beggar and pretending to be drunk. Was it all to anger me and throw me off guard? When she thought up to this point, deep down in her heart, she couldn't help but come to admire Adam a little, no matter how underhanded his methods were. But so what? Now that I know, I won't fall for it again, she thought inwardly. She looked Adam in the eye and muttered, You're really good at acting. Adam was slightly taken aback by Lisa's sudden change in demeanor. He realized that it would be very difficult to trick her again during this match. Realizing this, he placed his arm on his chest and exaggeratedly bowed like a stage performer. "Thank you, my lady." "Oomph." Lisa harumphed. Adam's theatrics were now beginning to annoy her. Without speaking another word, she began weaving hand motions to cast her spell. Adam's eyes narrowed, and instead of making distance from the spell's range, he charged headfirst. His plan was to interrupt Lisa's hand motions. What was the number one reason for a Magus' spell to fail? It was the interruption of their magical components. But he had severely underestimated this genius. Lisa's hand speed was many times faster than Adam had expected. And before he'd even reached her, a bright magic circle had already appeared on Lisa's palm as she slammed her palm to the ground. Rank 1 spell, Shape Earth. A thick earthen wall was erected in front of her. Seeing this, Adam simply snorted. How lame! He quickly approached Lisa, planning to circumvent the wall and attack her. But much to his surprise, Lisa had already cast the same spell once again and placed her palm on the wall. Following that, close to a dozen earth spikes were formed on the earthen wall. The thickness of the wall continued to decrease as the earth spikes were formed. And then, pew, 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 the earthen spikes flew toward Adam at lightning speed. Seeing this, Adam's eyes widened in shock. He wasn't shocked seeing the incoming projectiles, but the ingenuity of Lisa's spell casting. This spell could be said to be one of the most versatile spells amongst rank 1 spells, but most of it depended on the spellcaster's creativity. So what? Adam grinned like a madman. Time to test out that move. Instead of dodging the incoming earth spikes, he ran towards them. Finally, he would be able to use the ability that he had developed with the help of the White Lotus. Sphere of Resonance. Ever since Adam had acquired the White Lotus and began consuming the soul fragments inside the mysterious space, his soul had been strengthening at an astonishing rate. And the strengthening of his soul directly increased his spiritual power and perception. Adam's perception had increased to such a degree that at one point he even had difficulty processing everything that was happening in his surroundings. Only after constant practice was he able to control his heightened perception, and the result of that was a technique that he had personally developed. He named it Sphere of Resonance. This technique effectively shortened the area his heightened senses could perceive and concentrated it in a radius of a little less than 2 meters around him. And this wasn't 2-dimensional, but 3-dimensional, meaning he could even clearly perceive the things happening above him as well as underground. Within the sphere of resonance, nothing could escape his senses. Even the most minute changes would be immediately noticed by him. This is where his confidence stemmed from as he charged towards the incoming projectiles. There was one minor drawback to this technique, however. Utilizing this technique put a strain on his mind. However, this could be overcome by not using the technique for prolonged periods. The entire arena, even the professors, were astonished at Adam's suicidal charge. Not to mention, the youth wasn't wearing the academy's uniform. The cloak actually contained an inscribed defensive spell that protected students against most rank 1 spells. To everyone present, Adam's actions were simply him courting death. But what transpired next completely stunned the crowd. When the first earthen spike was only less than an inch away from piercing his forehead, Adam leaned to the side while continuing his charge. In the end, the earthen spike zoomed past his face by only a hair's breadth. And that was not all. The subsequent spikes that came at him were all dodged efficiently. Adam made the least amount of movement necessary to avoid the projectiles. And in the end, he had managed to dodge every single earthen spike. Lisa's spell wasn't even able to touch a single hair on his body. The entire arena was dead silent. Everyone was having difficulty comprehending just what had transpired. Even most of the professors were taken aback at Adam's finesse. Adam laughed like a madman as he approached the earthen wall that separated him from Lisa. Then, he jumped high in the air while weaving his hands quickly to complete the physical component of his spell. Just as he had leaped across the wall and Lisa finally came into view, Adam pointed his right hand's index and middle finger at her. Following that, a brilliant magic circle lit up at the tip of his fingers. Rank 1 spell, Eldritch Beam. Dark purple energy crackled at the tip of his fingers, and the next moment, it zigzagged its way towards Lisa in an unpredictable manner. Seeing Adam's maniacal grin and the energy beam headed in her direction, a hint of fear crept up inside Lisa's heart. But the next moment, her eyes narrowed as she took out a small block of dry ice from her pouch. Boom! A loud explosion took place in the fighting platform, and dust and debris flew in all directions. The place where Adam's spell hit Lisa was completely shrouded in dust. Nothing was visible. Adam landed on the ground, but he didn't seem happy at all. He had already canceled the sphere of resonance. It gave him a severe headache if he used it for a prolonged time. He had a solemn expression on his face as he stared at the dust-filled area in front of him. Before his spell had landed on Lisa, Adam had noticed that she had already taken out a material component to cast a spell. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but clench his fists. She managed to remain calm and cast a spell under the threat of Eldritch Beam? Unbelievable! And as expected, when the dust settled, a damaged dome made of ice became visible in everyone's vision. Oh my goodness! She managed to block Adam's spell. If I'm not wrong, that right there is a combination of two spells. Ice Wall and Shape Water. Monsters. Both of them are complete monsters. Did you see how Adam dodged those earthen spikes earlier? Yeah, that was awesome. I can't even imagine how he was able to dodge so many projectiles while moving forward. As expected of the first and second-ranked students of the first-year batch, the audience was at the edge of their seats as they discussed the match with great enthusiasm. This whole experience was an emotional roller coaster ride for them. They went from hating Adam to admiring him to finally cheering for him. In the world of Magi, strength was respected by all. In the professor's viewing room, all the professors were discussing Adam's earlier actions. Although his running into the volley of earthen spikes seemed reckless, it was actually all calculated. Just as the professors were debating if Adam had used some sort of divination spell or if it was something else, Berger decided to explain to them. The boy has ridiculously high spiritual power for someone his age, so it is only natural that his perception would be very high. I'm guessing he used some sort of technique to capitalize on his incredibly high perception. Professor Godfrey nodded. She then looked at her old friend and asked, "Do you think Adam developed this technique on his own?" Berger shrugged. "Who knows? But I won't be surprised. After all, the kid did score full marks on the analytical test, did he not?" All the professors were moved. Doing well on the analytical test didn't just mean that the student would have an easier time analyzing and comprehending spell models. It also meant that they were more than capable of developing new techniques and spells. Just as everyone was discussing this, there was a sudden movement in the ice dome on the platform. The ice dome began to intensely vibrate, and it seemed that it would break apart any moment now. Seeing this, Adam's eyes narrowed, and he began weaving hand motions to cast another Eldritch Beam. However, much to his surprise, the ground underneath him cracked apart, and two large earthen hands viciously grabbed his leg, disrupting his spell casting. Shit! Adam cursed under his breath. But it was too late. The ice dome suddenly shattered, and Lisa grabbed two large ice shards and jumped in the air. Then, her hands moved at lightning speed, and she completed the spell's physical component. Following that, the two ice shards slowly broke down into fine particles mid-air. The material component was also complete, and then, to everyone's sheer shock, two magic circles lit up on Lisa's palms, and two rays of icy energy shot in Adam's direction. Rank 1 spell, Frost Ray. The two spells pierced Adam, one in the shoulder and the other in the knee, causing him to fall miserably on the ground. But what shocked everyone, even the professors, was that a mere rank 1 flesh stage Magus was able to dual cast. Dual casting referred to the phenomenon where a Magus was able to cast two spells simultaneously. Keeping all three spell components in mind, Dual casting was a very difficult process, but it was still possible. However, it was only possible after a Magus advanced to rank 1 neural stage. At this stage, the brain and the nervous system received a massive upgrade by the nourishment of mana. This allowed the Magus to do things that they were mentally incapable of doing earlier. But for a flesh stage Magus to dual cast was simply inconceivable. Everyone in the audience was so shocked that they had forgotten to even make a sound. They were all watching things unfold with bated breaths. Amidst the pervasive silence, Lisa slowly walked toward Adam step by step. Her back was straight as an arrow as she confidently moved forward. She couldn't help but feel fortunate that she was able to end the match as early as she had. After all, she was already beginning to feel slightly dizzy from inhaling the slight bit of relaxant gas at the beginning of the fight. But all worked out for her in the end. Victory was hers. She stood in front of Adam, her head held high. "You are a formidable opponent, Adam. I have learned much from this fight." Adam remained motionless as he knelt on the ground with his head hung low. Seeing his defeated look, Lisa couldn't help but feel a little bad for him. She didn't wish to inflict more injuries upon an opponent who had already lost the will to fight. Thus, she asked, "Do you yield?" B. Indeed, Adam remained motionless. He spouted some gibberish that Lisa couldn't understand. What was that? Lisa frowned, wondering if her last spell had ended up heavily injuring Adam, who wasn't even wearing the Academy's uniform. "Behind you," Adam replied, but this time his words were a little more comprehensible. Lisa's eyes narrowed, and she suddenly had a foreboding feeling. She wanted to retreat a few steps away from Adam, but suddenly a figure appeared behind her. This hazy figure quickly grabbed Lisa's arms, preventing her from casting any physical spell components. Then, the figure smashed Lisa on the floor. Bam! Ack! Lisa grimaced in pain as her head slammed against the floor. She could feel someone tightly holding her hands behind her back. She struggled to free herself, but ultimately, she couldn't. With great difficulty, she turned her head to look at this person, and when she did, her eyes widened in shock. She hurriedly turned back around and looked in front of her, just in time to see Adam dissipate into gray smoke like a fleeting mirage. An illusion, she muttered in incredulity. When she turned back around, she saw the real Adam winking at her. He asked her the same question she had asked him a while back. "Do you yield?" Lisa was filled with utter disbelief. She couldn't speak for a long time. Finally, she managed to spit out a word. "How?" Adam grinned and began explaining. The entire arena was silent. They simply couldn't believe what had just happened. In the eyes of the audience, when Lisa broke free from the ice dome and cast Frost Ray, her spells had managed to hit nothing but thin air. Then they saw Lisa walk towards an empty spot on the platform and begin talking to, once again, nothing but thin air. Meanwhile, Adam was silently standing behind Lisa, all this while covering his mouth and struggling to contain his laughter. The crowd was dumbfounded, completely and utterly dumbfounded. In a luxurious viewing area, the professors were also similarly shocked, but not because of the same reason as the students. Professor Jock stuttered in astonishment. Did Adam just now also dual cast? Berger chuckled as he exhaled a puff of smoke. Indeed, he was able to cast 2 spells simultaneously, just like the other kid. But to be more precise, he cast a total of 3 spells. 3? Another professor asked. "Lord Berger, could you please elaborate?" Berger took yet another puff from his pipe and began explaining. The boy dual-casted 2 rank 1 spells, Dingy Illusion and Hide. He first weaved an illusion of him kneeling on the ground. At the same time, he also cast Hide on himself to camouflage his presence and hide behind the girl. Finally, he cast Dingy Illusion once again in order to mimic his voice. The professors understood everything now. The rank 1 spell, Dingy Illusion, was able to cast either an illusory image or an illusory sound. It was not able to cast an illusion of both image and sound at the same time. Moreover, the illusion would be stationary. It was a rank 1 spell after all. Its effects were limited. Another drawback of the spell was that the illusory image would only be limited to an area of 5 by 5 feet. That was why the illusion of Adam was of him kneeling, taking up very little space. Furthermore, the illusion would only be visible to one target. That was why, while the entire audience saw Lisa interacting with thin air, the target of the spell, Lisa thought that she was genuinely interacting with the real Adam. I see. On the fighting platform, after listening to Adam's explanation, Lisa couldn't help but sigh dejectedly. Her face revealed a bitter smile as she asked, "So the relaxing gas that you threw in the beginning was all so that my senses would eventually become dull and you'd be able to efficiently cast hide on yourself?" Adam simply nodded. The rank 1 spell, hide, although handy, would be ineffective if the target was keenly aware of their surroundings. After a moment, Lisa breathed out a heavy sigh after realizing that she had been playing in Adam's palm since the beginning of the fight. Finally, she admitted defeat. "I yield." Adam loosened his grip on Lisa's wrists and got off of her back. He then stretched out his hand to help Lisa up to her feet. Lisa looked at Adam's hand, and then at Adam. In the end, she faintly smiled and grabbed his hand to stand up. Adam smiled brightly. "Good fight." The referee came to his senses after the conclusion of this spectacular fight and finally declared the result of the match. The winner of this duel is Adam. Oh! The crowd burst into cheers. This was the first time that most of the students present had seen someone utilize illusion magic so effectively and clinch a victory. This was the most exciting fight they'd seen. Moreover, after witnessing the spirit of sportsmanship between the two young Magi, they couldn't help but give a standing ovation as they continued to applaud. "Adam! Adam! Adam! Adam!" Seeing the crowd chant his name in such a lively manner, Adam couldn't help but blush a little. In the end, he placed his hand on his chest and bowed in all 4 directions. The splendid theatrical piece he had crafted had finally come to an end. In the audience, Berger looked at Adam's antics and faintly smiled. "So you've chosen the path of the illusionist after all." More than a month had passed since the duel between Adam and Lisa took place. A lot of things had changed since Adam had displayed his prowess on the stage that day. Adam's actions and behavior that day had caused some professors to frown, but the majority of the students started looking up to him. Adam's rebellious nature and his efficient use of illusion spells had thoroughly won the students' hearts. In fact, a lot of students had begun showing interest in the School of Illusion because of Adam. Although the professors were happy at this development, they were also frustrated because the students looked up to Adam's rebellious character. Apart from this, a lot of young girls, mostly first-year students, had become fans of Adam. There were even instances where they would come in groups to catch a glimpse of Adam in class or just simply have a conversation with him. Adam happily welcomed them. Initially, he was a little shy because he wasn't used to getting attention, especially from the opposite sex. But soon he got used to it and even began enjoying it. He was a 15-year-old boy after all. On this day, Adam was in his study room brewing a blue potion with rapt attention. Meanwhile, Edward and a burly youth named Jonathan were in the living room drinking wine and playing cards. Jonathan was also a first-year student like the two of them. He was the kid that came third in the entrance exam. He was deeply moved by Adam's duel with Lisa, and ever since then, he's been constantly sparring with Adam whenever he had the time. It couldn't be helped. Jonathan was a battle maniac after all, and over the course of the month, he and Adam had become really good friends. After a few minutes, Adam breathed a sigh of relief as he had finally succeeded in brewing the potion. Although he failed quite a lot of times in the beginning, his success rate had drastically improved since the time he first started brewing potions. Adam carefully poured the blue potion from the large cauldron into 5 empty vials. The name of the potion was Broken Oath. It was a strength potion that gave the user a great boost in strength followed by an even greater loss in strength. He gently placed the crystal vials in his satchel and prepared to leave the room. On his way out, he bade his friends farewell. "All right, boys, I'll see you both at dinner." "Bye, Adam," Edward replied without looking up. He was concentrating on a card game. "Adam, don't forget to buy the materials for the familiar ceremony tomorrow." Jonathan reminded him before getting back to the game at hand. Adam nodded, but inwardly he smirked. My familiar ritual ceremony will be a little different from you guys." He then left the dorm room, and quickly made his way to herbs and more. There is no hope for a cure, Victor. The most I can do is extend her life with potions, said Berger in a somber mood. Across from him, a tall and muscular man with black hair, blue eyes, and a thick beard was sitting. He was wearing luxurious black garments and a velvety red, silk cape. His face had a striking resemblance to Edward and Elaine. This man was none other than the guild master of the Mercantile Guild, Victor Turner. Right now, Victor was in a terribly sad mood. His wife's condition had worsened in the past few days. He had personally come to Berger to get the medicine this time, hoping there would be another way for this old gnome to save his wife. But like always, the gnome's answer didn't change. Berger was helpless. He had never seen such a disease in his long life. That is the reason he paid even more attention to this. Not being able to cure someone was an insult to a master herbalist like him. But more than that, he was very curious about the origins of this type of disease. It was a disease that sucked that mana and essence out of a person. Victor's shoulders slouched further, and he sighed. I understand, old Berger. He then faintly smiled and sincerely said, Thank you for all that you've done. Don't worry about it. Berger waved his hand nonchalantly. Rest assured, I will continue to heal Elio with my potions for as long. Berger's words came to an abrupt halt when the store's entrance door slammed open and a figure barged in. Mwahaha! Old man, I've managed to brew another successful potion. Want to see? Adam came in enthusiastically when suddenly his gaze fell on Berger and a fierce-looking man seemingly talking about something important. Sorry. I'll come back later, Adam meekly said as he turned around and prepared to leave. Hold on, young man, Victor called out in a deep voice as he got up from his seat and walked toward Adam. Seeing such a towering figure walk toward him, Adam couldn't help but gulp nervously. Sorry, sir. I didn't mean to interrupt. Victor stood in front of Adam and spoke gently. Your name is Adam, yes? Adam was taken aback. He couldn't help but wonder how this stranger knew him. Yes, sir. May I know who you are? Victor smiled. I'm the guild master of the Nightingale Mercantile Guild, Victor Turner. Adam was stunned. The man in front of him was one of the wealthiest people in the Southern Federation. He just couldn't understand how this man came to know him. Nice to meet you, sir. How do you know me? Victor's eyebrow furrowed in puzzlement. Did Edward not mention anything? Now, Adam was even more confused. Mention what? Wait a minute. How do you know Edward? Realizing just what was happening, Victor burst into laughter. Ha! I see. Seeing Adam's puzzled expression, he ruffled the kid's hair and spoke warmly. I am Edward's father. Adam was dumbstruck. He knew that his roommate and best friend was rich, but he didn't know he was the son of the guild master of the Mercantile Guild. Realizing that Adam did not become friends with his son due to any ulterior motives, Victor was very gratified. His voice turned even warmer. Both Edward and Elaine have told me a lot about you. It was finally nice to meet you, kiddo. Adam was still reeling in from the shock as he continued to stare at Victor like an idiot. Victor simply chuckled and took out a crystal card from his pocket. He then handed it to Adam. Here, take this. If you show this to any of the shops affiliated with my guild, you'll receive a flat discount of 35%. Moreover, this card is valid in any of the kingdoms in the Southern Federation. Adam received the card in a daze. Thank you, sir. Just call me Uncle. Victor fondly ruffled Adam's hair once again. He turned around and bid farewell to Berger. Thanks for the potion, old Berger. I'll see you later. He looked at Adam and smiled. Farewell, kiddo. You should come by to my house sometime for a meal. With that, he left the store, leaving Adam standing by in a daze. Suddenly, pow! The smoking pipe magically flew out of Berger's hand and smacked Adam in the forehead. Adam grimaced, and he was brought back to his senses. While Adam was gently massaging his forehead in an aggrieved manner, Berger was intently inspecting the potions the youth had brought. After a few minutes of scrutiny, Berger shook his head with slight disappointment. This batch of Broken Oath is identical to the ones already in the market. Deep down, he was expecting Adam to once again bring a new recipe for the potion, but he was simply wishful thinking. Apart from that, he was quite impressed by Adam's progress in herbalism. You seem to have improved a lot, boy. The old gnome nodded in approval. Adam replied smugly, Of course. I'm a genius, Kikik. However, inwardly he was thinking, how can my herbalism not improve when I have thousands of years' worth of experience in my head? Berger simply rolled his eyes at the youth. He didn't care to admonish such behavior. After all, Adam had every right to be arrogant. In fact, even his own rate of progress couldn't match Adam's. He kept the 5 crystal vials away and got a business. For platinum coins apiece. Adam nodded in understanding. Strength potions were less valuable than healing potions, so naturally they would cost less. But money wasn't what he was here for today. He had already sold quite a lot of healing potions in the past month, and his net worth was close to 150 platinum coins now. He took out an ancient-looking black tome from his satchel and placed it on the counter. Then, he spoke with shining eyes, Sir, I finally managed to learn the language required to read this book. Oh, Berger was pleasantly surprised. He spoke with raised eyebrows. I didn't expect you to learn the language so quickly. Adam made a distressed face. It was very difficult to learn it. I had to spend a lot of coins in the Savant Tower to be able to learn this language. It's completely unlike the common language we speak in the Southern Federation. Of course it's difficult to learn, you fool. Berger scolded. How can you even compare the Maori language to the common language of the secular world? By now Adam was used to the grumpy gnome's constant scolding. Thus, he asked curiously, Old sir, what sort of background does this language have? I remember you said you found this tome in an ancient ruin back when you were young. What type of ruin was it? Berger smoked from his pipe and patiently explained. Legend has it that the Maori language was jointly created by the ancient mine dragons and the first gnomes. That is why you'll see traces of draconic and gnomish languages in it. It is also essential for all Magi who deal with the spiritual aspect of magic. Whoa! Adam was so fascinated by this new piece of knowledge. He had learned at the academy that dragons were an ancient race. They were very powerful and magical creatures, but also very reclusive in nature. One could only come across a dragon if they were extremely fortunate. So it was a surreal experience to learn something that was said to have been created by dragons. But there was one thing he didn't quite understand. Hence, he asked, Sir, how did gnomes get involved with the mine dragons? Berger's face revealed great pride as he replied, Us gnomes have the highest affinity to illusion magic compared to any other species in the world. So it is only natural that my ancestors would work with the mine dragons in creating this secret language. Adam nodded his head in understanding. He began rubbing his chin, deep in thought. A few moments later, he asked, You mentioned the spiritual aspect of magic. Can you please explain? And how does it relate to illusion magic? If it was earlier, Berger would have smacked Adam on the forehead and told him to ask the teachers in the academy. But now things were different. Since Adam had shown interest in embarking on the path of the illusionist, Berger didn't mind disclosing some important knowledge. After all, Adam was a great seedling. Not only did the kid have great talent in herbalism, but also in the school of illusion. The gnome began. There are 8 schools of magic, as you already know. These 8 schools can be further divided into 2 aspects, the physical aspect and the spiritual aspect. Adam hurriedly took out his grimoire from his satchel and began taking down important notes. Seeing this, Berger didn't mind. He continued, The schools of invocation, alteration, and warding fall within the physical aspect, whereas the schools of illusion, enchantment, and divination fall under the spiritual aspect. Sir, then what about the school of summoning and necromancy? Adam asked, puzzled. Berger puffed smoke out of his mouth and explained, These 2 schools of magic are special. They belong to neither aspect, but at the same time, they belong to both aspects. What do you mean? Berger smirked. I'm afraid those 5 vials of broken oath can only buy you so much information. Adam's lips twitched, and he thought to himself, This cheap bugger. But in the end, he decided not to buy the rest of the information. He'd be taught this at the academy anyway. He had come here to trade for information regarding Spirit Familiar, but he got sidetracked. Now he had to trade something else with the old gnome to get what he was actually here for. Adam combed through the memories of the Hebralist powerhouse and finally found something that would be of great interest to the gnome. He grabbed a parchment paper from his satchel and began writing on it with a feather quill. Burger glanced at the parchment paper, wondering what the brat was up to. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he spoke in pleasant surprise. "Oh, interesting." After writing down the entire recipe in detail, Adam handed the parchment paper to the old gnome. He smugly asked, what do you think?" Burger read the whole recipe and began laughing. "Ha ha, not bad at all." What Adam had given Burger was a wine recipe. The Powerhouse's memories contained tons of wine recipes. Adam picked a random one and gave it to the old gnome who loved indulging in wine and tobacco. He looked up at Burger, his eyes shining with anticipation. "Sir, I'd like your help setting up a ritual to contract a spirit familiar." "Oh," Burger was amused. "A spirit familiar, eh?" A familiar was a creature of magic that formed a bond with the Magus. The bond they shared was very special. After the bond was formed between the Magus and the familiar, the Magus would be able to use some of the innate abilities of the familiar. Similarly, the familiar would also be able to use spells that the Magus knew. In some ways, it could be said that the Magus and the familiar shared a common existence. There were two types of familiars that a Magus could contract. The first type was the creatures that could be found in the material world, and the second type was creatures such as Blackie. These were called spirit familiars, for they weren't creatures of the material world, but the spirit world. Ever since Adam learned that Blackie was a spirit familiar, he'd been wanting to have one for himself as well. There was no particular reason behind this decision. He just found it very cool. "Yes," Adam nodded excitedly. "Is it possible?" "It is possible, but..." "But what?" Burger explained. "Spirit familiars are very different from normal familiars. Firstly, unlike normal familiars, spirit familiars won't always be in your company. After all, they are creatures of the spirit world and like to spend most of their time there. That's okay. It's not like I was going to depend on my familiar for every little thing." Adam waved his hand. "It's good that you think that way." Burger nodded in approval. After all, there have been many cases where Magi became complacent after contracting a familiar. But keep in mind, the ritual for contracting a spirit familiar has a high chance of failure. The chances of a spirit world creature resonating with you and responding to your call are very slim. The old gnome added. "So, then how did you form a contract with Blackie?" Adam asked curiously. Burger revealed a rare, gentle smile. "I managed to come across a heavily injured Blackie many years back when I had visited the spirit world. At the time, I had healed him with my potion. And ever since then, he's always answered my call." "Ah, that's so touching." Adam clasped his hands over his chest and smiled. "Pow! Don't get sentimental with me, boy." Burger returned to his grumpy self and smacked Adam in the forehead. Sorry." Adam wanted to curse the old gnome, but didn't have the balls to. His face turned solemn, and he spoke. "Sir, I'd still like to give this a shot. If I don't succeed, I can always contract a normal familiar." Burger nodded as he smoked from his pipe. "Give me a week to prepare everything for the ritual. The materials required shouldn't exceed 100 gold pieces, and I believe this wine recipe of yours is worth many times more. So what else do you want?" Adam was ecstatic that Burger would help him with the ritual. Hence, he decided to act magnanimously for once. He raised his head and spoke like a true young master. "You can consider the rest of it as my gift to you." Pow! 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 Burger ruthlessly hit Adam with his smoking pipe. He roared, "Stingy human! If you have so much money to squander, why can't you buy yourself some nice clothes to wear?" "Arg! Wait." Adam was on the verge of tears. "My clothes are fine." Pow! 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 "Why must you dress like a hobo and embarrass yourself? Get lost." Burger kicked Adam out of his store. Adam ran away like his life depended on it. "D-damn you." His aggrieved voice lingered in the crowded cobblestone streets of the market district. A week later, Adam was sitting on his bunk bed and practicing mindfulness. The mana particles in the air swirled around him and endlessly entered his body through his flesh. The mana constantly nourished every inch of Adam's skin, and soon he seemed to have reached a breakthrough point. The mana seeped in through his skin and was finally able to come in contact with the muscles. Sensing this, A smile crept up on Adam's lips, but he continued to revolve the mana extraction technique. About half an hour later, he opened his eyes and smiled brightly. I've finally advanced to the muscle stage of Mana Foundation. It had been almost 2 months since he entered the academy. Finally, he had advanced to Rank 1 second stage. He jumped off the bed and landed on the ground. Fatty, let's go. Edward, who was reading arcane theories in the study room, looked at Adam excitedly. Is it time already? Yeah. Adam was excited as well. Screech. Suddenly, a small creature flew out from the other end of the room and landed in Edward's arms. The creature was the size of a household cat, except it had the body of a feline and the wings and head of an eagle. This was Edward's familiar, a griffin. However, currently, it was only a baby. It had only recently hatched a week ago during Edward's familiar binding ritual. Edward gently rubbed his griffin's head. Aquila, are you ready? Screech. Aquila fondly rubbed its head against Edward's chest. Let's go then. Edward laughed, and then together with Adam, left the dorm room. The duo ran through the campus and finally stopped at the white marble gateway, which was the main entrance of the academy. Where's that nerd? Edward grumbled. Here, came a voice from behind him. Eek! Edward jumped in fright. He hurriedly turned around and screamed. Don't scare me like that. Lisa simply rolled her eyes. Meanwhile, the white fox cub in her arms menacingly growled at Edward. However, it ended up looking extremely adorable instead. Lisa looked at Adam and nodded. Let's get going. Ever since their duel, Lisa had surprisingly become great friends with Adam. The girl had come to respect Adam after their battle. The two would always get together to study arcane spells and other magic-related studies. As a result, she also became acquainted with Edward, who always hung out with Adam. Initially, the two were like oil and water. But now, thanks to Adam, they got along quite well. She, just like Edward, had agreed to witness Adam's familiar binding ritual. After all, it was very rare for someone to carry out a ritual to form a contract with a spirit world creature. As Magi, the two were naturally curious and decided to tag along. Jonathan wanted to join as well, but at the last minute, he was called by his father to attend something family-related. Hence, he wasn't able to make it. Adam greeted Lisa and then suddenly shot off into the distance. The last one to reach the old man's store buys dinner for everyone. Ha ha ha. Lisa and Edward were momentarily stunned. But soon, Lisa began running after Adam, a faint smile adorning her lips. Wait. Edward struggled to catch up to his friends. This is unfair. Old man, I'm here. Adam walked inside the store and looked around for the old gnome, but he was nowhere in sight. Lisa and Edward entered the store after him. The former looked around in curiosity and wonder. This was the first time she had visited this store. Meanwhile, the latter was panting like a dog. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed in the store. Come upstairs. It was Berger's voice. Adam excitedly led his friends up the spiral staircase and went to the second floor, which was Berger's laboratory as well as his living quarters. There, he saw the old gnome instructing the towering adamantine golem to inscribe a mysterious formation on the ground. Lisa approached the formation on the ground and curiously began studying it. She nudged her glasses and muttered, "This familiar binding ritual is very similar to the ones we used in the academy last week. Except there are some minute changes in the first and fourth quadrants." Berger, while smoking from his pipe, nodded. Correct. The runes in the first quadrant open a portal to the spirit world, whereas the runes in the fourth quadrant serve as an anchor. Anchor? Adam was puzzled. What for? So that your spirit body doesn't permanently separate from your physical body and wander in the spirit world for eternity. Berger chuckled in a threatening manner. Hearing this, both Adam and Edward were scared. The latter whispered into Adam's ears, "You sure you want to do this?" "Oh, of course." Adam appeared brave, but his trembling knees gave him away. Berger was amused. "Don't worry, things won't go south. But if they do, Blackie will help." Woof! The little puppy appeared out of nowhere and pounced on Adam. But like all the times before, Adam didn't avoid him. Instead, he welcomed Blackie with open arms. He hugged the puppy and asked with watery eyes, Blackie, you'll help me, right? I'm your friend, right? Right? Blackie dubiously looked at Adam with narrowed eyes, wondering why the stupid human was acting even stupider today. I'll reward you if you help me. I promise. Adam tried to coax the naughty little thing. Blackie turned its small head to look at Burger, seemingly asking for confirmation. Burger simply shrugged his shoulders. The puppy then turned around and reluctantly nodded. Seeing this, Adam's eyes twitched. He couldn't help but inwardly curse this stupid dog. He then placed Blackie on top of his head and watched the golem continue to carve the ritual formation on the floor. Meanwhile, Lisa, Edward, and their respective familiars were curiously looking at Blackie, who was treating Adam's head like a throne. Lisa had never seen a spirit world creature, so she was extremely curious. She stretched her hand to try and pat Blackie. But suddenly, Gore! Blackie noticed this, and he looked at Lisa with a frown. Sorry. Lisa immediately took back her hand, her back drenched in cold sweat. Following that, Blackie returned to taking a nap on Adam's head. So scary. Lisa cast a secretive glance at Blackie. She then looked at Adam and thought, how did the two of them get so close? It took about 15 more minutes before the adamantine golem had finally finished inscribing the ritual formation. The formation consisted of a pentagram enclosed in a circle. Furthermore, the circle was enclosed inside of a square. A total of 9 common ingredients from the spirit world were placed on the formation. 5 on each of the 5 points of the pentagram, and 4 on the 4 points of the square. Burger pointed at the center of the pentagram and instructed Adam, "Go sit there." Blackie jumped off of Adam's head and started jogging around the formation, seemingly scrutinizing it as he kept nodding his head from time to time. He then looked at Adam and gave him a thumbs up. Woof! Adam gulped nervously and walked toward the formation. He then sat down at the center of the pentagram and looked to Burger for guidance. Burger began explaining, not only to Adam, but even to Lisa and Edward. Spirit world is a place of extremes. When you enter this dimension, your senses will be enhanced. Colors will appear more vibrant, and sounds will seem more distinct. It is quite a magical place, but it is also extremely dangerous. The gnome's voice turned solemn as he continued after a brief pause. The spirit world is made up of all sorts of abstract information and symbolism. If you try to make sense of all that you see in this dimension, you will fail miserably. Your head may even explode. Inside this mystical world, time and space have lost their meaning. One cannot discern the direction, nor can they distinguish between the past, present, and the future. That is why an anchor is needed when visiting the spirit world. The 3 kids were filled with horror and disbelief. Just from this small description, the spirit world seemed like a forbidden zone that a mortal shouldn't even dare to venture into. Edward and Lisa couldn't help but glance at Adam in concern. Adam, on the other hand, was so nervous that he couldn't stop his body from trembling. Noticing this, Burger taunted, "Say, boy, do you still wish to venture into the beyond?" Adam didn't reply for a long time. He was scared. He was very sacred. But so what? He clenched his fists, trying to stop them from trembling. He looked into Burger's eyes and said with firm resolve, "Of course I will." Burger grinned. "Good. Very good." The next moment, a ridiculous amount of mana gathered in the gnome's hands, shocking everyone present. They couldn't help but wonder just how powerful one must be to be able to command such a large amount of mana. Burger reminded, "Also remember this, boy. The spirit world is the home to spirits. Spirits can be good or evil. Either way, I recommend you not to interact with them. Furthermore, there are also some hidden existences residing deep within the spirit world. Trust me, you do not want to attract their attention. They are powerful entities, far more powerful than me. So keep a low profile." Adam didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he thought, "Damn you, did you really have to mention the last part?" Burger brought his palms together, resounding in an extremely loud clap, followed by a wave of energy rippling outward. He injected mana into the ritual formation, following which the formation lit up in a resplendent light. Adam took deep breaths and tried to calm down his beating heart. The light of the formation completely enveloped him. And then, the space above the ritual formation was torn asunder, and a direct portal to the spirit world was formed.